Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description. Once again by Double M7. Lady Toki grants Luffy one last chance to correct his mistakes. Luffy was sent 12 years into the past in order to relive his life. Though there was a catch, he retains his 19-year-old mind and body. How will he change the world? For the better. Adios.
Whole Cake Island. What did you say now? Big Mom had been enjoying a tray of sweets when this terrible news reached her ears. Mama, Vinsmoke Sanji refused your invitation, said Tamago, on his knees, bloody from the beating he received from Mugiwara. In a mere whisper, he added the last part. Mugiwara said, "Go fuck yourself." Sorry Mama. Bobbin was also beaten to a pulp, but they were scared at their punishment. Mama, it doesn't matter, the show must go on. Big Mom had already invited the Vinsmokes to the wedding. Regardless of no prince in attendance, the assassination plot must go on. But after this, we are going to eradicate that cocky little ant. Him and his merry crew. I have a score to settle with him and the bad children that went along with him. Big Mom's hair became ablaze at the memory of Luffy invading her land and taking Katakuri and Brûlé from her. Though in the shadow, Pudding had been listening in. Her heart beat even greater at the thought of this Sanji declining Mama's invitation. Nobody ever refused her, and to know someone had the confidence to do so, it made her flutter in excitement. Pudding made her way into some deserted ruins, one in which was run down and forgotten by even Big Mom herself. It was here where her meeting would take place, where she would attempt to convince her sibling to work together to end their mother's terror. She entered the ruined land and found her brother Cracker sitting beside Raisin, Nougat, Noisette, Oven, Snack, and Daifuku who awaited her arrival. Then on her sister's side, Smoothie was in attendance to observe. There was a chance to sway her. Also there was Lola, Galette, Custard, Broy, Praline, and Flamp. Chiffon was noticeably missing. Well, we are all here in secrecy as no one know of our meeting today. Pudding began. As many of you already know, Mama was going to kill me 2 years ago. And if it wasn't for Brother Katakuri's sacrifice, I would be under the dirt like Brother Brownie. To this the crowd remembered their fallen sibling, all because their mother needed to prove a point. So I would like to cut to the chase and say what I want to say. She paused for a brief moment. I want to kill our own mother. If someone were to hear the conversation it would sound bad, but the way Big Mom operates, it was justifiable. My, little Pudding throwing out big words. Flamp spoke up, using her snarky voice over her own siblings. Pray tell, what is your plan for this assassination attempt? On the day of my supposed wedding, Mama is planning on murdering the Germa 66. When her plan begins and our siblings put a gun to their head, we will be able to take advantage of the chaos by all putting our combined efforts in killing our mother. The mere shock should be enough to give us an opportunity to pierce her impenetrable skin. I thought about this for a very long time, and this is the only way we can be free as our own individual people. No longer are we going to be carted off in alliance-based marriage, die on the whim of our mother's mood, suffer due to our negligent parent. Excellent plan. Oven began. But she is an emperor for a reason. Our mother is strong enough to level mountains. Kill you in one swipe of her hands. What then? Daifuku looked at his brother, agreeing with his statement. Despite being neutral in the whole thing, Smoothie was listening carefully. This strategy was very risky, but Pudding hoped that her siblings would stick together and agree with what she saw. She knew that Sister Lola and Sister Chiffon were on her side, and so was Brother Cracker. It was everyone else. You know, began Broy, the twin sister of Brûlé. Ever since Sister Brûlé left with Brother Katakuri, I have felt her joy through our twin connections. I would truly love to feel what she is feeling. Yeah, it seems like Brother Katakuri has it figured out, even achieving the same rank as Mama. I would love that sort of freedom. This was Raisin who spoke up, grasping his sword at the thought of self-freedom. It was non-existent as a member of the Charlotte family. I have secretly married a fishman named Aladdin. We have been together for 8 years, married for 4 years. And I regret nothing. Charlotte Praline admitted her bond with the top officer of Atlantis Island. My husband will aid us in our mission, I guarantee it. I am not against the idea, it would be nice, added Nougat, to which Noisette nodded his head in agreement. I'm in, said Galette. Me too, said Custard as she hugged her sister Lola as she was sitting beside her. It's about high time we reunite with our brother, isn't that right, Brother Oven? Daifuku finally was swayed to the thought of freedom. About high time, Brother Daifuku. Oven was now fully on board with the plan. This only left Smoothie and Flamp. The former was not saying a word, but the latter got up and was going to say something. But no word ever escaped her as her figure was replaced by a perfect copy, using her balloon system to manifest a perfect clone even for just a moment. The real Flamp was running at top speed. She was laughing maniacally as she was going to reveal Pudding's treacherous plans and become one of the most powerful members of the Big Mom Pirates. She was going to finally become her mama's favorite once she tells her about all who participated in the coup d'etat. Haha. Traitors, all of you. Wait until Mama hears of this, exclaimed Flamp as she zoomed through the abandoned relic. As she looked back to see if she had any pursuers, her body suddenly collided with something solid, as her momentum brought her to a sudden stop. She must have lost several teeth at impact and fell on her butt. Her backside was caught by her balloon system. What the hell? Exclaimed Flamp, although she trembled as she looked at the person in front of her. Where are you going, Flamp? A deadly tone spoke over the fallen girl. For over Flamp was Charlotte Smoothie, signifying her allegiance change with the people for their personal freedom. Flamp was brought back to the meeting area. All her limbs were bound and her balloon system removed from her as it acted as a storage for her many weapons. So the wedding is in 4 days. What do we do now? Said Smoothie as she held the pouting Flamp on one arm. We bid our time and weigh our siblings' allegiance. Just drop a sly comment here and there. Cracker had been thinking about it for a long time. So what about Mama? Definitely more than 2 of us will have to die in order to achieve this level of freedom that we are wanting, said Galette, but she did not fear death, she just feared for her sibling's life. I got something to say about that. For through a mirror portal, out came Chiffon and Pez. The siblings immediately recognized the mirror ability. Hello brothers, sister, it has been a while. And out came Brûlée, to a flood of tears and love as everyone tried to embrace her. It had been a long time since they have seen their sibling, way too long. Even the ever so reserved Smoothie got in on the embrace. It was truly a heartfelt moment. But more importantly, Capone Gang Beeg exited last. Our captain will definitely be here for the wedding, said Beeg, referring to himself and Brûlée, with his signature smug smile plastered over his face. The baby, Pez, then exclaimed, Mugiwara, in glee. Wano. This should be good for now. Rob Lucci was heading a rescue party for the time-traveling samurais. He continued to look around, stretching his observation hockey to its limits to make sure that they were not being followed. Alright, Lucci. Kinnaman sheathed his blade for a moment and began to give out orders. Alright, if we want to reunite with our allies we must blend in and hear what people are saying. Kanjuro, a camouflage house please. You got it, Kin. Kanjuro noticeably used his left hand to start painting, creating a poorly drawn camp for them, and yet it will have to make do. Everyone's sweat dropped at the appearance of the place but went in regardless. Kikunojo looked at Oluchi, who remained outside. I'll keep watch. Kikunojo nodded his head. Inside the tent, there was a poorly drawn table along with some weird-looking zabuton that felt like bricks when people sat on them. Alright, so in the past 20 years, there must have been a lot of different events that have transpired. But loyalty transcends even time, so we must locate those who are loyal to our lord, and your father, Odin. I must locate my brother, he will definitely know more about this situation. Kikunojo began. I know that Nekomamushi and Inuarashi survived the chase. I must get to them in Zo, said Raizo as he revealed a vivre card of both minks. Excellent, thought Kinemon. What about this man who is supposedly helping us? Kanjuro began to rouse suspicion towards Lucci. Momonosuke was fast asleep, curled up like a ball and sucking on his own thumb. He was exhausted from all the crying he was doing. Though something exploded outside which caused the group to rouse in panic. Raizo and Kikunojo immediately went outside and found Lucci in combat with warriors of the current shogun of Wano, Orochi. Lucci kicked a samurai straight to the face and tossed another man in the distance. He then transformed into his leopard-human hybrid form and engaged in combat with 3 different samurais. "We have sensed your intrusion. This is a direct order from Lord Orochi to slay you," exclaimed the swordsmen as they brought their sword down towards Lucci in unison. But Lucci pushed them back and delivered a powerful Rokuogen. That sent them flying the distance. "How could they know we were here? We were well hidden," exclaimed Lucci. Suddenly a familiar yet strange spike came rushing towards Lucci. Its substance was clear and yet it was very sharp. If Lucci hadn't activated his Tekai, he would have a hole through him. He knew this power. The string-like substance could only belong to one person. "They must have eyes everywhere," exclaimed Kinnaman. "Their escape must continue once more." Though they were brought to an immediate stop by a single woman, who wore 2 blades on her back. She had a mask over her face, but her face was fierce and determined. "Come quickly," said the blue-haired swordsman. "Who are you?" asked Kinnaman. Once again they were being asked to trust a stranger. Lucci was fighting back their pursuer and was lagging a little bit behind. "I am Shimotsuki Kuina, a loyal subordinate of the Kazuki clan. Please follow me to safety." On the back of this Kuina character was the blade of Lady Hiyori. Enma. Kinnaman immediately trembled, as on his waist was Aim no Habakiri, the twin blade of Enma. This woman can be trusted, or she could have stolen it from Lady Hiyori. "All right. Where to?" said Kinnaman, still cautious at the new arrival. "To safety." And she slammed several smoke bombs before opening a contraption below her feet. "We must hurry." The party entered through the contraption, first Kinnaman, with Momonosuke in his arms. Then Kikunojo and Raizo followed. Kanjuro entered, then Lucci right after him. Kuina closed the contraption from behind her. "It can't be." Lucci had to run for he could not believe who he fought with just moments ago. "What is it?" asked Kanjuro, who was in front of Lucci in the narrow tunnel. "A man my captain killed many years ago is somehow here," said Lucci in disbelief as he looked at his hands that had the remains of the clear strings that was used against him. The sound of footsteps filled the area above them, and they were already making their way to safety. "Who is it?" asked Kuina, who brought up the rear. "Many years ago I, along with the likes of my captain, the Yonko Dogtooth, and the strongest swordsman, fought against a very powerful family which overtook an entire nation. But it can't be, he was killed by Captain." "You know Hawkeye?" asked Kuina as she remembered him from the time she died in Shimotsuki village. "I do," replied Lucci. "Who is the man?" interrupted Kanjuro, wanting to get more information. The group continued on through the narrow tunnels, not stopping even one bit for a break. Finally Lucci said, even with the disbelief in his voice. "Doflamingo. Crimson Island, a New World island, sat in between the dangerous waters known as the Calm Belt. It was fairly unknown, and that was the way Shanks, the Emperor, liked it. He stood up from his bed and stretched his tired body. For months he had been putting off a date with a certain dark green-haired bartender. He looked himself over the mirror several times, fixing his khaki pants and his dress shirt that he borrowed from Ben. Someone looks whipped. Yasop entered his room and mocked his appearance. "Shut up. You're married, stupid," responded Yasop, and as if fate would have it, a certain green-haired woman snaked her way to the arms of Yasop. "Damn right he is," the woman said as she pinched Yasop's butt, to which the elite sniper yelps in surprise. "Happily married too," said Yasop as he began to lust over his wife. Once the sniper heard that his wife was cured, he immediately set out to get her as soon as he could. Due to his responsibilities, he wasn't able to return home until his son left with the Straw Hats. Bashina was spiteful at first, but love finds its way in reconciliation. So Bashina went with Yasop and had been living in Crimson Island, safe along with the other family members of the red-haired pirates. "Gosh, get a room," Shanks laughed as he went outside to get to his ship. It had been a long time coming. Speaking of a long time coming, something rumbled in the distance, and within an instant Shanks felt a familiar presence. "Oh, looks like I won't be going on that date after all." Shanks removed his dress shirt and revealed his toned body. An emperor's body, rock solid. Shanks exited his house and outside heavy air filled the surroundings. "Looks like we might have to fight." Ben Beckham joined Shanks, then the members of his crew began to filter out of their homes and joined their captain. The entire red-haired pirates were present, lining up. This was the entire fighting force of an emperor, so therefore they were overwhelming in numbers and not just that, in fighting power as well. No, stand down. This is between me and him. Shanks stepped forward, he was going to meet him in halfway. For on the other side of red-haired, was another Yonko, a man out of time. In his company were his strongest commanders, the former Emperor Katakuri, the greatest swordsman Mihawk along with his apprentice-turned-equal in Roronoa Zoro, the Thunder Emperor from the depths of Hell Enel, the most beautiful woman in the world Hancock, the Sand User Sir Crocodile, the Snow User Monet, the Gold Emperor Guild, the Golden Lion Shiki back in his prime, the World Explorer Burndy World, the Master Mechanic Douglas Bullet, the Undying Phoenix Marco and surprisingly, the world's strongest man of his generation Whitebeard. So Mugiwara took several steps forward, his frustration was reaching its peak. Shanks matched Luffy's resolve with his own, their clash was going to be right down the middle. Luffy. Shanks trailed off his words, wondering what his reaction would be. You bastard! Luffy exclaimed as when they finally got close, their haki exploded with each strike. Luffy delivered the first blow. A right hand straight to the face of Shanks. The Emperor underestimated the strike as it was short, but an invisible fist connected with his face. Advanced armament. Shanks was surprised yet quickly recovered, pulling Luffy by the arm and delivering a clothesline. He had a reason for doing the things he was doing. Why? There was hurt in his eyes. The question was quite simple and yet weighted so much. Why did Shanks put a hit on him? Why did Shanks betray him like this? Why did Shanks decide that it's necessary to keep him frozen for exactly 9 years? It had to be done, was Shanks' response, their fist colliding with each other's face. It was unspoken and yet Luffy understood. The tenacity of red-haired and his response to his challenge made Luffy understand that it was important. But it was still wrong. Shanks feel his pain. Luffy and Shanks were careful not to reveal his time travel fiasco as only 3 people truly know his travels. Shanks the rat bastard, his grandfather Garp, and Dragon, his rat bastard father. You are the man promised, exclaimed Shanks as he delivered a knee through Luffy's guts. In the prophecy, a man who will change this world. He then toned his voice down a little, only speaking with Luffy. By traveling to the past, you have inadvertently changed our future, the world's future, and you were too early for your promise. You should have let me live through those 9 years, with my people, exclaimed Luffy, throwing a powerful 1-2 punch right at the guts of Shanks. The red-haired emperor spat out blood, but continued to exchange blows with Mugiwara. Though there was a bigger problem, something more urgent. Why did you give them Pluton? And Luffy delivered a jet stamp over the head of Shanks. But the red-haired man recovered, creating some distance. The Marines were hot on your tail. The Gorosei were going to send their forces to stop you. They needed something to keep them busy, said Shanks with a sad expression on his face. You gave them a world-shattering weapon, you bastard. They destroyed Whitebeard's island, Sphinx. Luffy continued to exchange blows, each strike swapping haki-infused punches in each other's body. Across the ways, the Straw Hats and Whitebeard pirates were watching in anticipation, while the red-haired were not concerned about their captain. Hey! Screamed Usopp across the way. The 2 Yonkos were destroying their surroundings. It was intense, but Usopp wanted a drink. What? Yelled back Shiki. Want to grab a drink? Yelled back Usopp, though Bashina smacked him on the back of his head. Aren't you a bit concerned about your captain? Asked Bashina. Nah. Responded Usopp. To which Katakuri and Whitebeard exchanged a look and shrugged their shoulder. Why not? And just like that, on the other end of the battlefield, the Straw Hats and the Whitebeard pirates came to an agreement to go and have some drinks with the red-haired pirates. Crimson Island. Bar. The group started filtering out to have that drink. So, part of the Straw Hats now? Asked Ben Beckham to Marco as they shared a drink. The bartender gave them a shot of a decade-old whiskey. Yeah, he's a cool guy. He saved us from Pluton. The thought of the massive ship caused a shiver to run through the first commander, for one blast from the monstrosity was enough to send him through the ground. 9 years in Impelled Down has brought a level of clarity in my worldview, for all I strive for is for my captain to be king, said Enel as he had a glass of wine. HN, are you going to eat that? Lucky Root took the chicken wings from Enel's plate and began eating. I could have escaped when Blackbeard took all those prisoners 4 years ago, but I chose to stay, to reflect, to wait. I knew he would return, but it was just a matter of when. Continued Enel as Lucky Roo continued to eat. The rest of the crews were mingling and getting along well enough for such a tense situation. Moving across the bar were two powerful individuals, just sitting together and sharing a drink. Why weren't you there 2 years ago? Katakuri sat in front of Whitebeard as they both finally had a chance to decompress. Whitebeard took a heavy gulp through his drink and got another. When you waged war with Big Mom, we were going to come, but somehow, Kaido decided that he wanted to invade my territory. So I had to make the difficult decision of pulling my forces there. You decided not to come after, huh? Crocodile sat on another side of the table, finally letting out his frustration. Fucking 2 years we've been in that shithole. Some allies. Crocodile drank his alcohol and poured himself another. Yeah, I got to live with that decision. Whitebeard was silent for a moment. You know what I never understand? How Kaido decided to attack my territory, in conjunction with your invasion of your raid of Whole Cake Island. This piqued Katakuri's interest, as knowing his mother, she was very sly but smart about her tactics. She must have made a deal with the beast. That must have been it, since when we arrived, the beast pirates barely put up a fight and retreated after 2 days. Crimson Island. The positioning of the island was shifting dramatically, shifting slightly to the east, then west, as the exchange of the two emperors was enough to move the island with their punches. You're a bastard, Shanks. Luffy was bloodied from the bare fist exchange with Shanks. I'm just looking out for you, replied Shanks, as he too was not looking any better than Luffy. Neither man purposely used their true power, as Luffy never used his fruit ability, nor did Shanks use his conqueror's haki. Though an exchange such as this could not truly contain their astronomical abilities, as crackles of haki escaped their punches, their kicks caused the island to shift, and their will was enough to make people from different islands to unexpectedly pass out. Fuck you, Shanks. Luffy used what energy he had to deliver a powerful punch straight to the face of Shanks, and the man took it. No matter what, he knew in his heart that he was doing his best for the Straw Hat Man. Then Luffy felt a familiar feeling, one that he hasn't had in a while. Flicker of light covered him, and in that moment, Luffy was transported within Shanks' memory. Visions of his life and past action were revealed to Luffy. This ought to be good, Luffy said as he began to see the light at the end of the tunnel, where the first memory was revealed. The vision was a young Shanks. He was sick with an extremely high fever, Buggy caring for him. The Roger pirates had just returned to them, finally completing their voyage to the last island of the world. Captain. Shanks felt the presence of Roger, though Roger didn't allow him to get up. Rest, my boy. So Roger pulled up a chair next to his bed, while Buggy ran to get more fresh water and towels. So how was it? Was there a lot of treasure? Asked the young man weakly, though the reaction of the captain. Wahahahaha. His captain began to, and he immediately felt stupid for his question. I'm sorry, boy, but what we found. Well, that's not important. All that I can really tell you is that we arrived too early. What do you mean by this, Captain? Asked the young man, sitting up, forgetting that he was very sick. In 20 or so years, my boy. The person who is promised will arrive to fulfill the prophecy which I could not. I only wish to live long enough to see this come into fruition, said Roger. But alas, I'm nearly dead. The captain joked as he crossed his neck with his finger. Damn it, Captain, don't joke about such a thing. Young Shanks screamed in a comical manner. Wahaha, okay boy, okay. Well, anyway, I have a very important task for you. What is it, Captain? When you run into this person, I would like to ask you to do all you can to ensure they fulfill the prophecy. Our world depends on it. Aye, Captain. The vision shifted, and it was Shanks watching Luffy leave. He remembered this day as the time where Luffy looked for Ace and Sabo. Shanks had followed Luffy. Disbelief still filled his eyes, then a certain realization hit him. He already knew that Luffy was the one that was promised. He felt it in the moment he met the young man. Shanks was going to let Higuma toss the young Luffy into the ocean, and Shanks would do everything he could to inspire him to fulfill his destiny, even give out a limb to do so. But the arrival of the young man into the past means that he failed in the future. Lady Toki must have sensed something from him. I must do all I can for this man, Captain's orders. Then it shifted once more, Shanks delivering a powerful blow to Admiral Zephyr, to hinder him from chasing after Luffy. He did not want to collide with an admiral at this stage of his piracy, but he had to protect Luffy. It was the time in Fishman Island, when Shanks entrusted the journey of Luffy he would need to stop the Marine's interest with him. There have been growing rumblings around the grapevine that this new Mugiwara is starting too much trouble. He had to interfere, or the wrath of the world government would rain upon the unprepared pirate. So he concocted a plan, one in which he would need to go to Marijo, give the world government what they need to keep them busy, and talk to someone he needs to get in contact with. The location of Pluton is where the sea meets an island that sinks. That was all Shanks gave them, and it was enough to keep them busy. Though as he left, he managed to meet with the man he needed to meet. "Take care of it," he said, to which the man responded with, "Okay." As time would have it, Shanks realized that Luffy truly was the man that was promised, and he openly challenged Whitebeard. The event was magnificent, and yet it was the perfect opportunity to unleash his plan, the one in which will save the world. He had to make the difficult choice, and he pulled the trigger. He stood in front of the Marine's path, allowing Kuzan to pass him and engaging Admiral Zephyr and Admiral Akainu for a short while before ultimately retreating. This bought enough time for Kuzan to do what was needed. And so it was done, as Shanks stood over a mountain, listening in on Luffy's final will. It had to be done. The memory disappeared as the time reverted to normal. Shanks fell on his back, spread eagle as Luffy delivered the devastating punch. He panted heavily as he was exhausted from their exchange. Neither man truly avoided each other's strike. They continued to punish each other, and by the best way they knew how. "Hey," Shanks began as he laid on his back, "you done?" "Yeah," said Luffy, despite not agreeing with Shanks and his conniving way of handling things. Luffy finally saw his side of things. "I'll tell you something." "What is it?" "Don't mess with my life anymore. Got it?" To this Shanks laughed, though his chest was too much in pain to continue to do so. "You got it," said Shanks, glad to have finally concluded the animosity that Luffy had with him. "You were heading out to a date, weren't you?" Luffy extended his hands to help Shanks onto his feet. "Yeah, with Makino. Do you remember her?" Shanks took his hand, but his pain level was so high that it was almost numbing. It was funny how just a few moments ago, they were trying to kill each other and were now having a casual conversation. "Of course, big sis, and you are a thing now, huh? Good to hear." And the two simply walked to the bar, the one in which everyone was hanging out in, and joined them. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at the duo. "So?" asked Mihawk, looking at the man who he challenged daily for a spar in his early life, and his captain who he highly respected. "We're okay now," Luffy said, to which Shanks had a smile on his face. "Yeah," and the crew celebrated, drinking together for the rest of the night. Whitebeard looked back with a smile, reminiscing on his time with Roger. They used to beat each other up all the time and finish their encounter with a drink. "In 4 days we're going to dethrone Linlin. You in?" he asked to Shanks. Whitebeard was already on board, and it was going to be a catastrophic event. "I will do you one better, I won't let Kaido interfere, how about that?" offered Shanks, because there was some sort of alliance with Kaido and Linlin, they just don't know to what extent it was. "Sound good to me," said Luffy as he toasted Shanks. "Remember, do not interfere with my life anymore." "I Luffy, I." And the two shared a drink to their newfound alliance. Once again, Luffy had obtained the promise of another Yonko. "What do you have for the Marines?" asked Shanks. "I got that covered," red-haired Shiki joined in their conversation, meaning the Golden Lion was going to make his presence known once more by the world. All Shiki really needed to do was distract them long enough for Luffy to take up business with Big Mom. "What about Blackbeard?" asked Shanks. "I still don't have anything on him. His personnel or even his location. The bastard is a shadow." Hachinosu Island. The Revolutionary Army finally arrived in the last known location of Blackbeard, but the thing was, it was empty. Only the starved figure of several giants. Dragon immediately called for the members of the Revolutionary to bring them down from their binding. Something was truly off. Lily went to help Haruden, growing to her normal size with her devil fruit, and unbound his binding. "Lily," began Haruden, very weak from being tortured and starved to this point. "Where the hell are they?" exclaimed Karasu, sending his crow all over the island, not finding any life form. "Not here." Lindbergh began to scan around them. Not a single person was there other than them. "Strange." Bello Betty said as she emerged from the ground with Morley and Ivankov. "Where the fuck is Blackbeard?" exclaimed Sabo, wanting to beat the shit out of these damned pirates. "They are gone," said Dragon, confused as hell as where the Blackbeard pirates were. For once in a long time, it would seem that Dragon was outsmarted. "What now then, Dragon?" asked Karasu. Their resources were precious, and now they wasted it on an empty lead. "We have to prepare for the reverie." Dragon turned around, disappointed at himself, and yet deep down, he was just happy to save his son's friends. It was the least that he could do. Where were the Blackbeard pirates? Whole Cake Island. It was magnificent, extravagant and exciting. The wedding party was finally commencing and the guest of honors were sitting along their designated area. No weapons were allowed during the event, so therefore the members of the Germa 66 only had their fancy suit to go to their funeral. The Germa 66 arrived confused as to where Sanji was, though the Big Mom pirates just said that he was busy getting ready, and they bought it. The participants were numerous in numbers, the sheer amount of guests were amazing. All in all, everyone who matters even the slightest to Big Mom was present. Pudding stood on her position, where she was tasked to look and act the part of the perfect bride. The members of the Big Mom pirates were scattered all over Whole Cake Island, with Perospero heading security measures. "Mama, what an exciting and fruitful day." Big Mom addressed the crowd, her family and their special guest. "I would like to thank all of you for coming to this special day for my daughter, Pudding and Sanji of the Vinsmoke family." Big Mom looked at the crowd and enjoyed their undivided attention. "To my lovely guest, I thank you for being here." She addressed her allies who cheered for her acknowledgement. "To my children who remain loving and loyal to me." Her children, even those who were planning on betraying her. She had an unusual glint over her eyes as if she knew something. Pudding looked into her mother's gaze, which lagerned onto hers for just a moment longer than the rest. Did she know something? The moment that Big Mom shifted her gaze from Pudding, she immediately looked down to her hands, with a panicked look about her. She must know something to look at her in such a way. Looking into the small mirror in her hands, she could see that Brûlé was staring back at her. She was panicking as the weight of the plan was on her shoulder. And if it all fails, everyone is dead because of her treachery. She trembled, and yet Brûlé returned her fear with a fierce resolve, as if to say, "Hang in there." Big Mom continued her speech, now addressing the Vinsmoke family, the one in which perfected their cloning technology, something that Big Mom is very interested in. "And to the family of the groom, welcome to this amazing day." This was the steps which will trigger the children of Big Mom to pull their weapons on the unarmed Vinsmoke family. Although their momentum was halted, as strong air filled the island. For in that moment, the attention of the crowd shifted to a blonde-haired man, wearing an all-white tuxedo, casually lighting a cigar as he coolly made his way to the reception. A change of plan, thought Big Mom. She accounted for this, and so her children brought down their weapons as they will wait for the end of the wedding to kill the Vinsmokes. "Here comes the loser," said Yanji, noticing the arrival of their brother. "Late as always," commented Ichiji, who tortured and made the life of Sanji a living hell. "Useless as ever," said Niji, smiling under his shade. "About damn time." Judge stood up and acknowledged Sanji's arrival, but instead of greeting him, he went to Reiju, and gave her a kiss on the cheeks. "Hey sis," said Sanji while proceeding to the wedding reception. Everyone was silent, following Sanji as he took over the moment. Big Mom was surprised at the arrival of Sanji, which means that the Straw Hats were just around the corner. But she'll play along with his little games, anything to make him come out, anything to kill Straw Hat's Luffy. "My wife." Sanji looked into the eyes of Pudding, causing her to blush feverishly. His entrance, his aura, his presence, they made her tremble. So this was who she was going to marry. Maybe she could get behind this arranged marriage. "Continue on with the wedding," exclaimed Big Mom, although she had her homies in high alert, searching for the Straw Hat Man. She owed him a world of pain, and she was going to deliver on her promise 9 years ago. She was going to kill him. So there she was, standing in front of Sanji, holding onto his hands as the proctor proceeded to commemorate their bond. Each moment Pudding's heart trembled, as the part of the "I do" was coming closer and closer. This was the moment that the Vinsmokes would die. "Look at me," whispered Sanji, as he noticed her fear. "I got you," he said in such a manner that her heart fluttered. Did she just fall for Mr. Prince? As the part finally arrived, Sanji responded with the sweet words of I do. It was her turn. The members of the Big Mom pirates were itching to pull the trigger. Her siblings were eager to gain their freedom. Once she says I do, all hell is going to break loose. So once again she looked down, with tears welling down her 3 eyes, and finally she triggered the events which will change the balance of the world. I do, she said, and the sequence of events were as follows. The Vinsmokes found a cold metal chamber over the back of their heads as their body was encased in thick candy-like substance. Judge looked around in confusion and realized that it was an assassination attempt. What is the meaning of this? He yelled, although knowing full well what is going to happen. Shut your mouth, father, you are being weak, exclaimed Yoji, who laughed at their predicament. You ungrateful little shit, began Judge, though he was interrupted by laughter. Ichiji and Niji laughed at his slew of emotions. This is your fault, father. You made us this way, said Reiju, accepting their fate. It was death for her family, and yet she found peace to it. Almost as if it was meant to happen. One less evil in the world. Though the guns were never able to fire, as behind the members of the Charlotte family members in charge with the assassination found themselves on the ground, beaten by the arrival of some strong individuals. Soul King, exclaimed one of the members of the Big Mom Pirates as he was responsible for the fall of Charlotte Ephilie, his gun falling from the head of Ichiji. Charlotte Bascarte fell at the slice of Charlotte Noisette as some of the Charlotte family finally revealed their plot. As Noisette sliced his sibling, he went with Oven and Daifuku as the group started to filter in, surrounding the Emperor. Reiju looked up at Noisette, then Niji laughed at being freed from their hostage situation. The Whitebeard Pirates, Charlotte St. Mark, the hulking stature of a man, found himself flat on his face at the handiwork of Marco the Phoenix. Marco sat on top of the man and casually whistled as he looked at the shocked look of Big Mom. Yoji looked at Marco and gave him a cocky smirk. I didn't need your damn help, said the green member of the Vinsmoke family. She knew of Pudding's treachery, but the department of her plan was never this high in terms of her expectations. Big Mom was actually proud of her child. Proud of her for bringing him Monkey D. Luffy. Corazon stood over Charlotte Mont'or as he held his pistol over the fallen man. Judge looked at Corazon, his tears finally halting for a moment. What is this? Who are you people? The Straw Hat Grand Armada, said Corazon. His voice was clear as day, a new thing for the usually silent man. Charlotte Dacquoise panicked as he too found himself sprawled on the ground by Bonclay, unable to move due to being knocked out. Big Mom stood in between her children, which now surrounded her. Oven, Daifuku, Smoothie, Noisette, Cracker, Galette, and Raisin. Custard, Broy and Nougat were told to wait it out as it could get ugly for them. You dare oppose me, children? Big Mom warned as her surroundings filled with thunderous clouds. Her head spawned a flaming entity and her bicorn became a blade. Oven was the first to lounge at his mother, superheating his fist as he looked to strike her face. But Big Mom took the punch, with Oven being absorbed within Prometheus. Brother, exclaimed Daifuku as he unleashed his Jin. Though he met his match as Big Mom went through his Jin in one slice, Daifuku received a deadly gash through his chest. He then fell flat on his face, shocked at how Aes and led. Cracker then charged forward, some his army of Cracker soldiers against Big Mom, but they were immediately toasted at the thunder strike of Zeus, which reached far as it targeted the rest of the traitorous siblings. Noisette tried to hop away from it, but he could not do a damn thing as he was electrocuted. No, this time Smoothie blocked off the thunder strike of Zeus, protecting the rest of her sibling. Raisin and Galette looked at one another as Zeus lightning went through Smoothie and it continued on to shock the both of them, frying them alive. Where is Mugiwara? Exclaimed Big Mom as those who surrounded her were defeated. She looked at Pudding, with Sanji standing in front of her. You treacherous child. I should have killed you 2 years ago. At least Brownie would have remained loyal to me. Big Mom then covered the distance. Not a single person in that wedding party could have stopped her. They tried, with Marco boosting himself to Big Mom and Corazon using Soru to catch her. But they were not quick enough as Sanji was the last line of defense before Big Mom could kill Pudding. He braced himself, ready to give his life to a mere stranger, his feet superheated from creating friction, and he was going to die fighting. Though it never got to that, as noticed that nobody in that party could stop her, at least not yet, as a blur of light escaped from the tiny mirror within Pudding's hands, coming in between Big Mom and her target. The familiar Straw Hat Man was wearing hockey on his forehead, as he absorbed the strike from the bicorn sword that was meant for Sanji and Pudding. At that moment, the participants of the wedding party were in awe, as the arrival of the Straw Hat Captain signaled the beginning of the end, the one in which Big Mom was no longer terrorizing the lands. "I wanted to tell you in person, to go fuck yourself, Lin," said Luffy with a confident look about him, as he blew back Big Mom and created some separation between them. The blowback was enough to send Oven out of Prometheus, as even the heat user could not defend himself against the flames of the homie. "Go now, I will deal with Big Mom," said Luffy, to which Sanji nodded as he escorted Pudding to safety. They had their work cut out for them as they were within Big Mom's territory, with all of her alliance. Parasparrow looked around, shocked at the betrayal of his siblings, though he immediately felt cold as a trident passed near his head. "Next time I won't miss, brother," said Dogtooth, the man who used to be an emperor of the sea. He brought out his hand and brought his trident back to him. "Back for more katakuri." Parasparrow raised his candy staff, as he once and for all wanted to settle who was stronger between them. Law and Chopper were immediately in retrieval duties, getting the fallen figures of Oven, Daifuku, Raisin, Galette, and Smoothie. They were destroyed by their own mother with such ease. What kind of a monster was Big Mom? Sand engulfed the Charlotte Opera, as he was completely isolated from his family. "Crocodile." "Big Ugly," replied Crocodile with a smirk over his face as he had a hand on his cigar over his mouth, casually floating over the sandstorm which he created. "I got a bone to pick with you, Hawkeye." Snack had intercepted the arrival of Mihawk. "You wish to die once more, I see," said the world's strongest swordsman as he brought out Yuru, gracing the sweet commander with his blade for the second time in Snack's life. "You will go no further." Boa Hancock stood in front of Charlotte Compote as she tried to attack the other members of the Straw Hats. "Snake Empress, I know of you too well." Compote took a deep breath, filling her lungs with air, ready to unleash her mysterious deadly weapon. More people began to filter in, matching up with the Charlotte children and Big Mom's allies. A slice went through the middle of an ally of Big Mom, though it wasn't fatal as the man merely reformed his body back to normal. "Interesting ability you have here." Zoro stood in front of another candy user, though this man was more adept with his ability, almost as if he was a logia. "Isn't it? Gaspard is the name. I am a candy human," he bragged as he resumed his normal form despite the cut done by Zoro. "Silent are we?" Kuro stood in front of a man who used 3 claws, nearly similar to his style. "Needles." The man with 2 swords tattooed on his face said simply as he brought his 6 claws forward, ready to engage with the black cat. Well, do you think you can keep up?" A tall man with a yellow jumpsuit and a sickle for an emblem along his chest. "Sure, why wouldn't I?" Kaku commented as he readied the 2 blades, pointing them back as was his style. "Eyes here." Robin had her arms crossed as her enemy was a strong member of the Charlotte family. She had an accurate strike that would kill someone in a single slash, though lucky for her, Robin wasn't going to die with just a simple cut. "Your death demon," said Charlotte Amand as she brought out her sword, swaying at each movement that she performed. "Our other alliance can't make it to the mainland," exclaimed another member of the Big Mom Pirates. For in the surroundings of Whole Cake Island, Charlotte Praline along with her husband, Aladdin, are leading the charge against the allies of the Big Mom Pirates who are now stuck outside in the sea. At the hull of Struzen's ship, Big Mom's longest-lasting ally, stood a saw shark fishman, one in which was hungry for a good fight. He hoped from a massive whale onto the ship which was a feed on its own. Arlong the saw. It was unfortunate that he would be late for the wedding, and now he was stuck out on the sea against the world's strongest fishman. "You will make a great dinner," said the sick old man. "Not if I can help it," said the saw shark fishman as he brought out his great saw blade. He had a smile on his face as the events that led up to this moment were truly exciting. Around the sea of Whole Cake Island, the members of the renewed Straw Hat Grand Armada Sea Division were scattered, and working in unison to stop the approach of Big Mom's allies. "You should have stayed down when Captain commanded you to only deliver a message." Crackles of electricity escaped him as he wielded a golden metal rod. Enel had not fought in so long that this was a welcome change. he was standing across from Tamago. "If I was not ambushed by the Straw Hat bastard I would have won," Tamago twirled as he readied himself, though he was met with a rude awakening as Enel sent a strong current through his body. "Nobody, and I mean nobody, ever speaks harshly of the captain. Not on my watch," warned Enel. And so there was no way to obtain new allies on land, so therefore, they had to use what they had. Counter was face to face with Uroge, his brother Kadeza was against Beeg, Cabaletta was in combat with Wiper, and lastly Gala was against Baby 5. Lola and Chiffon remained inside Brulee's world as they could not risk the safety of Pez in this war. Those members who held the Vinsmokes at gunpoint finally stood up, but they found themselves at the mercy of the Vinsmokes, as they were now garbed in their signature armors. To make it more grim for Linlin, there was Whitebeard, standing in the distance, along with his commanders who were well enough to fight. This included Jozu, Vista, Blamenco, Namur, and Izo. Of course Marco, who was already at the party. The rest of the Whitebeard pirates were recovering in the Straw Hat HQ. Try as they may, there was nobody in that land that could stand toe-to-toe with Whitebeard, and the only person who could was duking it out. If there was ever a doubt, it was Big Mom and Mugiwara. "Gurarara, when have we ever hung back?" said Whitebeard as he observed the ensuing chaos. The foolish chest soldier charged the Whitebeard pirates, causing the group to smile. "Never, Pops, never." Jozu transformed part of his body into diamond and charged through the forces of thousands of chest soldiers. Vista cut through a bunch of them in one swing while Blamenco slammed his mire forces. Meanwhile Izo used his superior swordsmanship to cut down any and all who opposed him. Namur was tasked with helping with the sea warfare while Whitebeard casually swung his Bacento through the fodder. Though these lowly chest soldiers were overwhelming numbers, the Whitebeard pirates were simply stronger. Marco arrived to aid his fellow commanders as he landed in a blazing blue flame, blasting back the enemy chest soldiers. "Need some help?" asked the first commander with a smirk on his face. A poppy seed zoomed past Marco's head as a group of the chest soldiers were swallowed whole by a giant plant monster. "Hey everyone, sorry we are a little late." On the shoulder of a massive cyborg by the name of Frankie, Usopp hung out. He had his kabuto ready to fire at a moment's notice. Then beside Frankie was Nami, who twirled her weather-manipulating weapon, unleashing a cold front on a layer of chest soldiers. Now that the party was set, where were the rest of the group? "Straw Hat HQ. Thank you." Haruta laid on his back as he was recovering from the massacre, which was the work of Pluton, the ancient weapon. "Don't sweat it, just keep up with your meds, and do not get up," warned Dr. Kureha as he changed Haruta's wet rag. In the headquarters were those who were unable to fight due to injuries and some fighters who remained to keep watch. The rest of their forces were either with Shiki, which was tasked with stopping the Marines from interfering, Shanks, who would interfere with Kaido if he wanted to join the party, or the bulk of the forces which were in Whole Cake Island. "Good, you're making good progress, King Du." The Whitebeard commander was taking small steps as he injured his lower body, his primary form of combat. Dr. Hiralik noted as he checked King Du's heart rate. Another patient spoke up. "You can do it, King Du." Dr. Hiralik then went to check up on this man, as he was yet to move his injured muscle. He had to do some movement, even minimal, or the consequence will be permanent muscle damage. "Yeah, well, you use your arms, Fosa, and I'll use my feet," King Du said as Fosa was yet to lift anything. He tore his biceps from the war against Pluton. "Satori, I'm going to need a saline solution," called out Crocus from another room. He was tending to Curiel and Blenheim, who were heavily injured from the airstrike. "This is so embarrassing, getting help for nothing but a flesh wound." Rikuyo appreciated the help, but that does not mean he liked it. Along the facility were Caesar, who remained watch along with the likes of Gladius, Gem, Buffalo, Tanaka, Dice, and Macvis. Then there was the patrol party, which was outside at the moment. Outside of the facility, a group was patrolling the surrounding. "God, it's good to be home." Chu stood outside as the fishman was left to stand guard of the HQ. He patrolled alongside Absalom and Bakura. The trio were on a casual walk around the premises as they did not expect any trouble. "Yeah, it's been some time, hasn't it?" Bakura said with a smile as she kept a vigilant eye throughout the surroundings. "Hey, wait up, Speed Jiru." A member of the Whitebeard pirates was left behind due to being injured thanks to Pluton. but he was quick to recover, so he volunteered to patrol. "Hey Jiru, we're just going around on patrol," said Absalom, stretching his tired muscles. "It's good to be out of that hospital bed. I hated not being able to be there with everyone," said Speed Jiru as he joined the patrol. Though Bakura picked up a note that appeared from the shadow, it was a simple, 3-letter that could have saved their life. Absalom read it over and was confused at what it meant. "Run. What the hell?" Though Absalom was never able to finish his words, as the next thing he did was plop face first into the group. Behind where Absalom once stood was a swordsman who smoked a cigar. He sheathed his blade and turned to look at the frightened figures of those who were with the invisible man. He was invisible no longer. "What have you done?" asked the terrified Bakura as a bullet penetrated her skin, straight through her body as she also fell on her back. It came from a good distance, from a sniper that sat along the porch of their ship. In the hands of the swordsman was a fruit that suddenly turned into a familiar spiral pattern. The swordsman then took a bite out of the fruit and he immediately turned invisible. "He's dead," Chu shot randomly, hoping to tag the rat bastard who killed his friend, but he found himself at the mercy of a massive man, who held him by his face. "Let me go." Chu attempted to fight, and yet his flailing turned into lack of movement, and then nothing. "No!" Speed Jiru tried to blaze forward, attempting to pierce the blue-haired man who killed Chu. But instead of flesh, he met the stomach of a long-nosed big man, bouncing back from his attempt. "No!" he cried as the end was near. He met the end of the club of the long-nosed man. Speed Jiru only regretted one thing, for dying before he saw another man become the king of pirates. Bakura trembled as she used all of her luck to get out of this situation, though her pleas were not, as she burned through the fire of a firefox. She suffered a great deal of comfort, and yet it was emptiness, almost peaceful. In her mind she could only apologize to Guild for not being able to be there with him till the end. "Zihaha onto the base," said a man with full pledge captain's attire. He then proceeded to unsheath his pistols, pointing them forward. Foolish revolutionary, thinking they would hang back and get invaded by Monkey D. Dragon. Teach was no idiot, that much is true. A giant man, easily double the size of a giant, appeared from the horizon, and using one hand, grasped the entranceway of the hidden base by the hill. He then destroyed the entranceway of the hidden HQ, to the surprised look of the guards in the entranceway. Dice and Macvis were shocked, but it was either fight or flight. So they charged forward, attempting to slow the approach of the enemy, and yet they were pushed to the side, with the invisible swordsman using 2 strokes of his blade to cut down the 2 powerhouse. They fell flat on their face as the invading forces were moving forward, further down the hidden bunker. Though finally, the members of the base finally made their stand, even those who were injured stood by the forces, the last form of defense, as they were going to get run through either way, and they were going down fighting. "Hello Teach." The superior running officer of the base was Zeph. The red-leg pirate chef stood in front of the group. No fear in his eyes, as it was either fight or die, and Zeph was going to fight. Around him were Satori, Crocus, Dr. Kureha, Dr. Hiralik, Gem, Gladius, Buffalo, Caesar, Jabra, Khalifa, Tanaka and Trebol. Then it was the injured commanders of the Whitebeard pirates who hobbled and struggled into position. They were short in number as they faced the overwhelming numbers of the Yonko. "Zihaha red leg, looks like you're still kicking." Teach outstretched his hands, revealing a hint of his darkness. Above his group was San Juan Wolf, and not a single person present could deal with the damned Woden giant. Though a pressing issue were the captains of Blackbeard's ship. Jesus Burgess, Shiryu, Vasco Schott, Avalo Pizarro, Katerina Devon, Van Auger, Doc Q, and Lafitte. Then Zeph noted that their spy, Gecko Moria, stood with them, and all they could do was look at each other, as if a secret conversation was going on. Moria wanted so bad to jump ship, returning to his friends. But Zeph was saying no, not yet. It was not the time. "What do you want, Teach?" Zeph had a tired expression about him. He was stalling for time, as he was hoping that anyone would come and help them, but it was bleak, almost impossible, as everyone who could help them was busy elsewhere. "We just want to destroy the seed before it blooms into a forest. That is all." He had a crazed look about him. He was pure chaos, an embodiment of anarchy. And just like that, the battle for their Leahs attacked by Burgess, but Zeph kicked him out of the way, to head straight for the Emperor himself. If anyone was going to do some damage to the Yonko, it would have to be him. I am a former commander too. Trebol was fighting for his life, and the snot user launched a heavy load of snot against Avalo Pizarro. And yet the blue-haired muscular beast was not bothered, dispersing the snot and lunging forward. "Your funeral!" exclaimed the crazed Titanic captain, penetrating right through the chest of Trebol. One strike and he got through the thick layer of snot that Trebol equipped around him. Down goes Trebol by Pizarro. Katerina Devon engaged Gem, one of the early members of the Grand Armada. He was formidable against the Foxfire. Gem was struggling. He tried to press on trying to make contact with Devon, but he was being pushed down by Fox Flame, and he struggled to continue. The whole time she was laughing, enjoying his torture of him. Down goes Gem by Devon. Then there was Caesar, who tried as he may to suffocate Shiryu, and failed at every turn. As the invisible swordsman was able to wound him despite being in his gaseous form. With little to no pain tolerance, it was a foregone conclusion. Down goes Caesar by Shiryu. Crocus, a member of the famed Roger Pirates when Gold D. Roger reached Laugh-Tale, was down on both knees, bloodied by the sheer brute punches of Jesus Burgess. "Comian, is that all you got?" Crocus defied him, but Burgess simply laughed it off, continuing to beat down the doctor. Kureha and Hiralik were sprawled out, unmoving as Burgess was quick to deal with them. Down goes the doctors by Burgess. Satori used all the balls that he could, and yet Vasco Shot looked at him as if he was the idiot. "You are the dummy, you are," Satori cried as he continued his barrage, and it was no effect on the Titanic captain. "I'm no dummy." Vasco Shot used the same club that murdered Speed Jiro. Down goes Satori by Shot. Then the Whitebeard commanders worked in unison against Sanyuan Wolf. They worked well together, and yet they were handicapped. And the giant Woden monster was barely affected by their explosives. "Be my friend?" asked Sanyuan Wolf, but Rikuyo unleashed his chomper, and Sanyuan took offense on the bite. So line any logical Woden giant would do. He grabbed Rikuyo in between his hands and squeezed. "Bad human," said Sanyuan to the terror of King Du. Haruta tried to hack and slash, but his skin was so thick and even his best strike would do nothing. And Sanyuan simply stomped, and it was over. Blenheim and Curiel tried their hardest to save Haruta, but their muscles gave way quickly, and the foot of Sanyuan came crashing down on them. No, and the pain continued as they were handicapped. The Whitebeard commanders did their best, but their best was not good enough. Down goes the Whitebeard commanders. Gladius and Buffalo worked together against Lafitte, but they could not hit him as he simply zoomed through them, accurately puncturing them on their vital spots. Gladius wasn't even able to launch his explosive, and Buffalo rotated for the last time. Down goes Buffalo and Gladius. Tanaka got close to Van Auger, but he was knocked back by an accurate shot. Jabra tried to follow through, but he too met the cold hard bullet of the marksman's weapon. Down goes Tanaka and Jabra. Meanwhile there was Teach fighting Zeph. Not once did Teach move as behind him. A bag full of all sorts of fruits were turning into devil fruits. With each fallen straw hat, a new weapon was added to his arsenal. "Zihaha!" exclaimed Teach, but he noticed something odd. Moria was helping some of them to escape. In fact, Moria used his shadow to hide Dr. Hiralik and Dr. Kureha. Hey, what the hell is this, Moria? But this distraction gave Zeph an opening to strike him directly in the guts. "I'm with the Straw Hats." He couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't wait any longer. His friends died while he pretended to be the enemy, and he could not do it. Moria was with the Straw Hat. A giant wave of shadow engulfed the fallen Straw Hats. Tears welling up on his eyes as he waited too long. His friends were dead because he was deep under cover, and he could not let it continue. Teach looked shocked, wiping the blood from his mouth from Zeph's kick. And instead of toying with the chef any longer, Teach swallowed Zeph in a sea of darkness. Screams of agony escaped the encasing before silence, as Zeph fell flat on his face. Moria remained in the center of the Titanic commanders. His allegiance was finally revealed, yet everyone there was close to dead, or even dead. "Shame, Moria, you were a valuable asset," said Teach, and suddenly, Moria found a sword through his chest. As Shiryu appeared behind him, puncturing a hole through him. "Fuck you," Moria had substituted with a Doberman. appearing behind Shiryu and countering by puncturing him with his scissor blade. And then he opened the scissor, causing a deeper damage. Shiryu was in pain, yet he merely laughed at his predicament. Avalo punched Moria back and Doc Q immediately went to work on Shiryu, with Teach covering them in a shroud of darkness. To the shock of Moria, Shiryu was back on his feet, his wound was now repaired. "How, we are the future Moria. I will be the king of this fucking world," said Teach and created a darkness spike in his hand. He then sent the spike forward, though it never met its mark, as a freezing cold wall separated Moria from his death. "Get out of here, Teach." A new arrival had finally joined the scene. As the suspended admiral found himself in the territory of Straw Hat Luffy, he initially came to meet with Mugiwara, to apologize and explain his action, but the scene that he found was a massacre. It was brutal, even for the seasoned Marine. In the surrounding of the base, Bakura laid in her own pool of blood, with a small smile on her face as she used all her luck for help. Anyone. And out came Kuzan. Though that wasn't the extent of her luck, as from the port of Dawn Island, a blazing path of flame was made by a furious warlord of the sea. Portgas D. Ace had arrived, and he came with a vengeance. Teach analyzed his situation. Kuzan was trouble, and so was Ace, so there was no point to possibly lose one of his commanders to these top-tier fighters. "Another time then," said Blackbeard as he manifested a black hole, swallowing his crew into them. Zihaha. As Blackbeard disappeared, Ace arrived, throwing a massive fireball at the retreating Yonko. And yet it was too late. As Ace was nearly in tears, arriving a moment too late, he was going to join them in patrol just to make sure everything was okay. What the hell happened? Ace looked around, immediately tending to Zeph, who remained lifeless. Do something. He looked around and found Crocus, laying in his own pool of blood. "They're all dead," Moria said, looking down as two bodies escaped the shadow. Only two survivors out of the members of the Straw Hats and Whitebeard pirates who remained. His work undercover with the Blackbeard pirate was not enough to give his crew enough time to escape. Just a measly note. Fuck. Dr. Hiralik and Dr. Kureha is alive thanks to Moria, but everyone else is dead. Fuck, Kuzan said as he could not arrive any sooner, he was too late. They were all too late. Straw Hat HQ, 3 days before. Overhead on the centralized speaker system, all thanks to Frankie and Caesar, a fine tune was playing. It was an original piece by Brook as he poured his soul into it. The melody was upbeat, and the lyrics were heartfelt. This is why everyone enjoyed it. The sun rises with the morning air. I love this song. Jozu was snapping his finger, as he was carrying a load of supplies for their journey. He dropped off the 2 massive crates next to the Thousand Sunny. Isn't it? Brook had been energetic since the return of the captain, so these songs come natural. Macvis dropped a package next to the one that Jozu carried. Then Usopp and Kaya passed by them, where Usopp caught a piece of fruit falling from the crate that Macvis dropped accidentally. "Breath it in, let it fill your hair, finder's keeper," said Usopp with a smile as he took a bite out of the apple. Kaya playfully slapped her boyfriend as she too was given the apple and she took a bite out of it. "You big meanie," she said, laughing at his silliness. "I got to head out soon, my team needs a doctor." "Be safe, okay?" Usopp gave her a firm kiss on the lips. "For once trouble brews, I'll be there." In the underground cafe, 2 people were enjoying a meal together. "Aren't they cute? Young love, right?" Bakura leaned against the chest of Guild, as they were enjoying a delicious meal made by the fine chef of the Straw Hats. "To be young again, huh?" Guild said with a smile as he kissed the forehead of his love. It was strange really, seeing the captain back, but Bakura was now loyal to only one man. And Guild, while finding love with someone he worked closely with was new to him. He never thought he would ever find it again, but here they were. I'll be there. I'll be there. You guys make me gag." Tanaka sat with the duo, then next to him was Buffalo, who became good buddies with the phasing human as they had shared a similar humor, best friends even. "You're just jealous of them, Tanaka. NNINNN. Shut up, Duffus, you're not doing any better either." "Keep it down, why don't you?" exclaimed Caesar jokingly from across the way, to which Tanaka waved him away. "Bunch of rowdy pirates." "Aren't we all?" said Monet as she sat beside Caesar, laughing at him. "Anyway, how's your project going?" "So my friend smile once more. Oh, the Pluton excavation project? It's going well. We have so much more toys than we can count. It's a wonderland. He then leaned in. Our new boss is kinda stiff though, he'll loosen up eventually. What about me, Caesar? Bullet sat on the other side of Caesar, plopping down next to him. Caesar trailed off, but luckily, an explosion occurred in the distance as Wiper and Baby 5 were having an accuracy contest. Comey and give up, babe, Wiper said as he wrapped his arms around Baby 5. Though the human weapon arsenal simply smiled lovingly to her boyfriend and accurately hit her mark 5 times in a row. Damn, D. I'll be there, sure babe, replied Baby 5 with a smile, which caused Wiper's mouth to hang open. Passing by the shooting range was Sanji, who walked alongside Jin and Kaku. Ready to be locked down? Asked Kaku, who had his hands behind his head. Maybe she's a babe, you know, pudding. No, I'm thinking stout and mean. Jin jokes, to which Kaku laughed. Though there was someone who wasn't laughing. Zeph stood in front of Sanji and the head chef immediately grabbed his ears. You dumbass, we have thousands of meals to cool, get back to work, fumed Red Leg. Damn it, Oldman, I'm on my smoke break. My smoke break, replied Sanji, to which Jin and Kaku chuckled. Put your troubles away, you both too. Zeph delivered a powerful kick on the forehead of the two snickering men, which caused them to follow Red Leg to the kitchen. Big and Kuro noticed this, to which they just shook their heads. Are you sure your sources are accurate? Asked Kuro for the 1000th time. He wasn't going to have people die on his order. Yeah, for the 1,000,000th time, Kuro, it's my wife, the mother of my child, so yes, my sources are accurate. Stop sweating it, if anything goes wrong, our captain is the insurance, replied Big. Suddenly, they were stopped by the appearance of Dice and Absalom, who was trying to scare them. Let your worries fade, damn, you're too loud, you big log, exclaimed Absalom. No, you tripped, replied Dice. Yes? Asked Kuro, who snickered at their attempt to scare them. Alright, listen, why don't you leave Galdino and Brook to do the boring monitoring duty? Asked Absalom, he wanted to be in the fight. Yeah, and we take their place on the mission. No, Absalom, replied Kuro. We need you both to watch over the injured, and to make sure everything is okay here. It's going to be so boring, replied Dice, to which Absalom nodded his head. Well, everyone needs to do their part, replied Big. For I will always be. Everyone ready? Galdino was heading the party. He looked over his group and was satisfied with the people he had. The group was animated, excited for their mission. So how is Zoe? Bonnie was speaking with Beppo, who was a mink who knew the way home. They were tasked with going to Zoe to garner allies in the coming war with Kaido. If there were people who would help them in this coming war, it would be them, as the minks were faithfully loyal to the Kazuki. I'd like to think that Richie would love it there, said Moji, who was part of the mission. He had missed his buddy, and he was doing a lot better than 2 years ago. He was a mess when Richie died, though he was getting better by the day. I feel like it's winter there, Monet said, joining the group. Or would it be summer on top of an elephant? It's going to be so awesome, Ohm exclaimed, rounding up the party. Elephant, exclaimed Beppo, to Zoe they go. Be safe, exclaimed Trebol, a man who has changed his ways, now a valuable ally to the group. There, you two, responded Galdino with a smile, and waved as the group left. I am completely against this, but it is the captain's orders. Buggy had his arms crossed, his bag packed and his people ready to go. The Straw Hats distributed their forces. A group would go to Big Mom's island, another will go with Shiki to stop the Marines, and lastly a group with Shanks to halt Kaido from aiding Big Mom. You'll be fine, Buggy, it will be like old times. Shanks stood in front of the group, overlooking the team which Luffy gave him. I don't like working with you, always stealing my thunder, Buggy said. Come on, man, it's not like I lost to Alvida, joked Red-Haired, to which Buggy began to chase after him with a knife, the two having a comical exchange. Their Kaido party involved Kaya, Senor Pink, Django, Kabaji, Sugar, Shira, Daz, Zala and Gedatsu. How's the little one? Asked Kabaji, while still on his unicycle, to Senor Pink. He can't wait to join the Armada, but I hope we can wrap things up before he reaches the age to join. I am doing this to have a simple life for my child. Once more we must say goodbye. Having a child would be magical," said Sugar with heart over her eyes. Though she hasn't found a proper partner to explore these options with. "And stressful," joked Senor Pink as being the only parent of the group. "Don't you want children with Usopp, Kaya?" This question caused Kaya to blush feverishly and the group laughed. Even Daz, who let out a snort of air. Zala and Gedatsu were sharing a look, almost as if they were hiding something. Django was gasping for air at the joke. For some reason it was extra funny to him, thinking of Usopp with a child. Luffy arrives through a portal, returning from a scouting mission. He analyzed all the points of Whole Cake Island, to make sure their plan went smoothly. He could not lose anyone, especially being invested in the relationship he established with everyone. All good. Luffy wrapped his arms around Hancock and began to walk towards the depth of the base. Though a report came in, "They have arrived." Who are they? The Rom their journey from Atlantis Island. And there was no word exchange, for Luffy and Arlong exchanged an embrace. "Welcome home, my friend," Luffy said as he tightened his embrace, a single tear falling from the eyes of Hancock, as the exchange was very passionate, like two long-lost brothers finding each other once more. "It's good to have you back, Captain." The rest of the Sun Pirates greeted their friends. They were the Straw Hat Pirates, turned Sun Pirates, and once again they are proud to be called the Straw Hat Pirates. And the sun sets once more, present time above the former underground base of the Straw Hats. Kuzan and Ace were leaning against the now broken gate. Moria was huffing and puffing, as Ace took his frustration out on him, Kuzan getting in between them. Words were exchanged, where Ace blamed Moria for not revealing his allegiance quickly enough and Moria blamed Ace for being so fucking slow, and the two duked it out. Enough so that they made a new hole in Dawn Island, though that was over. Now Kuzan was calming down Ace, and separated him from Moria. "So you're with the Straw Hats, Warlord?" asked Kuzan. "I am. You helped us," replied Ace. "I won't say anything if you don't." "Fine. Ace, we came as soon as we can." A masked warrior arrived, alongside a parasol-using woman. This man was Masked Deuce and in his company was Perona. "What happened?" asked Perona, to which her question was met with silence. Oh no, it was bad. Meanwhile with Moria, Dr. Hiralik joined him, taking a quick break from his painful job of counting the fallen. "Hey, hi," replied the shadow user. "Thank you for saving my life," Dr. Hiralik said as Moria was quick to hide the doctors in his shadow. He along with Dr. Kureha would have died. "Not quick enough," said Moria, to which Dr. Hiralik touched him in his right hand and squeezed it. "Don't blame yourself, not a single soul here today could have stopped this from happening." To this Dr. Hiralik returned to his job of declaring the dead. It was silent, empty, then just as fate would have it, there was air in his lungs. He was lifeless, laying along his fallen comrade, and yet, for some reason he took a breath once more, sitting up suddenly. He felt a sharp pain all over his body. This wasn't right, this isn't right. He continued to play over and over in his head. "Another one here," exclaimed a familiar voice. Her tone was panicked and yet relieved. Who was it? Who was he? He looked around, finding himself in a sea of bodies, his friends, his allies. They were all unmoving. And yet why was he breathing? He died in a painful fire, one in which, come to think of it, was very soothing. Why is he alive? Gem, look at me." Someone got in his face, immediately looking at his eyes with a flashlight. Dr. Kureha. He spoke, his mouth was dry. How long was he out? Across the way, several beds away from him, was a red-haired woman, drinking glasses, and glasses of water. "Welcome back, Gem. How are you feeling?" Dr. Kureha asked. Though looking closely, Gem noticed the fresh tears from her eyes. "Doctor, why am I alive?" asked Gem. Tears started to well up. He was finally realizing what happened and he felt guilty for being alive. "I don't know, Gem, but I'm glad. On a day like this, we need a little bit of miracle." She turned once more, letting the tears flow. The only other person to survive the massacre stood up, walking slowly towards him. She then got close and embraced Gem. "We have to keep going, for everyone," said the red-haired woman, Bakura. She too asked why she was alive, as it was nothing short of a miracle. The flames were painful, then peaceful, then nothing. "Yes," replied Gem, though the hug caused him to break down, finally. The weight in which they had to bear was heavy. Though they could not do anything now. Their captain will know what to do, he will have to. Somewhere. What the fuck do you mean we are missing some fruits? Teach had slammed their sack of devil fruits. They had gone in a hunt in Straw Hat HQ and the fruit that they actually wanted were missing. What is missing? Asked Luffy in his usual silky smooth voice. Luck, bomb, and gas fruit, said Van Augur, scouting through the bag of fruits. Fuck, the logia, out of all things. The logia is fucking missing, exclaimed Teach, unleashing a deadly wave of darkness all around him. We still came out okay, boss. We got the wolf, phase, snot, rotate, and rupture. Burgess tried to make the situation seem a little bit better. But Teach was not in the mood as he immediately grabbed Burgess by the neck. Do I look like I want, okay, you fucking idiot? Teach then tossed Burgess to the side. How could this happen? Meanwhile on the side, watching this frustration erupt from Teach, was the single woman in Teach's crew, who licked her lips and smiled at his frustration. What was her play? New world. We're the closest. We have to press on. Goddamn Mugiwara is going to beat another Yonko. The balance of power will be tilting toward him. It's too much control for one man to have. Aboard the marine ship were Admiral Zephyr and Admiral Fujitora. They were the closest to Whole Cake Island, and once again events happened under their nose. I wish to see this man who has returned from the dead. Fujitora had his eyes closed, though his signature scar was non-existent as he opened them, revealing a clear white iris. Due to the changes in the timeline, Fujitora never changed his justice, and therefore he never blinded himself. Where did the two admirals come from? They actually came from the World Economy newspaper, shutting down the newsline and arrested every single member of Morgan's staff. The entire news operation was replaced with marine agents, so therefore they now completely control the news. All it took was Zephyr to take down the news network. Fujitora just hung back and did not even lift a finger. Though the massive marine fleet was put into a halt, for 4 people stood in their path. Their ships were held in suspension as Z looked onward, eyeing the floating lion mane-wearing man. Gee ha ha ha. Where do you think you are going? Exclaimed the golden lion, floating along in front of the marine fleet. Shiki, I'm going to fucking kill you. Though Zephyr had to worry about others. For alongside the golden lion was the Burndy World the Explorer. Then there was Douglas Bullet, the strongest soldier. And last was the Golden Emperor Guild. All 4 were former prisoners of Impel Down Level 6. And all 4 were tasked in slowing down the world government from getting in between Mugiwara versus Big Mom. Oh, and to complete the team, there was also Magellan, the former warden of Impel Down, standing along the quartet, opposing the institution which he once stood with. This was familiar waters for the Marines, as when again they were being prevented from pressing onward. 9 years ago it was Shanks, now it was the Golden Lion and company. Not again. Zephyr did not achieve his rank by sunshine and rainbows. No, he got to where he was due to a mastery in hockey. In fact, he was so widely respected that only Garp could rival him in sheer strength. To have that form of respect, why he didn't care much for it. All he really cared for was absolute justice. So the first opportunity he got, Zephyr jumped from his marine ship, lunging into the sky and meeting the unsuspecting guild straight through, trucking through him with a single punch. And the golden man would have fallen in the ocean water if it wasn't for Shiki, who caught him moments before he landed in the water. Glad you're still spry, Z, exclaimed Shiki as he brought Guild aboard the enemy marine ship, the golden man going off as he brought the gold towards him, easily recovering from the initial shock from Zephyr's strike. Though Fujitora would not stand pat, as he was shifted to manifest 2 massive meteors from the sky and unleashing them on the 3 level 6 prisoners. Burndy got to work and absorbed the size of the 2 meteors and minimized them, so much so that the massive world-ending Meteor tree-size meteor. The effectiveness and quickness of casting his abilities was impressive. Even more impressive was Burndy redirecting the tree-size meteorite towards Fujitora, and Burndy sped up the projectile and increased its size as well. Fujitora looked directly at Burndy as he was swift in cutting the tree-size meteorite towards the sky, back to where it came from. Though with his gravitational power and momentum of the redirection, eventually those tree-size meteorites were going to destroy something, especially with the lack of gravity in space. Regardless, Fujitora jumped into action, colliding immediately with Burndy as the 2 squared off. With the two admirals busy with Burndy and Shiki respectively, Magellan and Bullet jumped along the marine fleet, causing as much damage as they could. "These are the more simple times," exclaimed Guild, jumping over to another marine ship burying a pole of gold into the core of the marine ship. "What? Destroying marines?" asked Bullet as he gathered material and created a mechanical sword that swung around the battleship with his orders. Magellan kept quiet as this was his people previously, though his allegiance has shifted since. He now worked with the Straw Hat, and his loyalty was unwavering with the man. It was strange, and yet he felt at home with these people. He smiled as a wave of his poison swallowed the mast of a marine battleship, eliminating its movement. Shiki, the Golden Lion, versus Marine Admiral Zephyr. Shiki threw debris from the battle at Zephyr, but the Marine Admiral simply jumped in between the debris, getting closer and closer to him. Once Zephyr got close, Shiki threw two wooden piles together and attempted to squeeze the purple-haired man. Though Zephyr got out of his encasement and threw a powerful punch through the guts of Shi, causing the Golden Lion to double over. His punches were heavy, comparing even that of his captain. The Admiral didn't let up, continuing on assaulting Shiki with punches wherever he would land in the air. Until finally, Shiki created just enough separation by catching Zephyr mid-air, and tossing him as far away as Shiki could possibly muster. He gasped painfully as he had a lot of internal damage from the bluntness of Zephyr's strikes. Any moment now, the purple-hair bastard was going to return for more, and Shiki needed to get ready. Burndy World versus Marine Admiral Fujitora. His projectiles were easily parried by the gravity user. Fujitora's skills were not limited by his swordsmanship. Once Fujitora got close, Burndy felt very heavy, unable to unleash his projectile at the gravity user. The Admiral exerted so much force that he felt like he was going to be drawn to the earth, disappearing forever. Burndy attempted to enlarge a rock and sent it to Fujitora, but the swordsman simply cut his attempt into pieces. Foolish world. Surrender or it will be death. The pieces of the same rock that Fujitora sliced up still retained their trajectory, and hit him across his face. Looks like Burndy was not going to go down without a fight. Death it is. Scoffed the swordsman as he took his blade and slashed Burndy across his chest. The strike was enough to send Burndy off the platform into the edge, and finally falling from the edge to the mercy of the sea. Burndy began his descent and nearly fell into the open ocean before Bullet retrieved his fallen form with a mechanical contraption he created. It was time to go. "They're coming. Retreat!" exclaimed Bullet, who sensed the approach of some powerful marines. Bullet carried Burndy on his arm while Shiki was breathing heavily. The admirals were no joke, but they weren't there for that. Got it. The reason why Guild was asked to tag by is for the sole purpose of doing the following. A streak of light was zooming through the air, and with the element of surprise, Guild was able to deflect the light using Admiral with several panels of gold. "Let's get out of here." Magellan provided a wall of poison, blocking an incoming magma wave. All these techniques were not meant to kill the admirals, it wouldn't be enough, it was just enough to slow them down. Shiki gathered his allies and swiftly put them aboard their ship, the Great White, and pushed them through the treacherous water. Aboard the Great White was Zio, who drove them to safety. "Let's go," Zio exclaimed, launching the Great White through the open sea, away from the Marines. Once again the pirates succeeded in stopping the Marines long enough to slow them in disturbing the war between Big Mom and Mugiwara. "Too slow," Fujitora said as he retrieved his blade and placed it in his shield. "Couldn't handle some damn pirates?" asked Akainu, slamming his hands against a barrel, decimating it into hundreds of pieces. "Fucking Shiki and Bullet were here," replied Zephyr. "They weren't here to fight, they were here to stall." "Yup," added Kizaru, crossing his arms. "If Aokiji wasn't suspended. No Aokiji sucks." And 80% of the Marine forces were there. They were even given assistance from the world government as 4 members of the Cypher Pole Aegis Zero were apparently already on their way to Whole Cake Island. The question is, was Shiki's attempt to stall them long enough to miss their chance? Open sea. On the moment of his magnificent descent, a dragon stood still as his body twisted around its own, for before the dragon was red-haired, who halted his attempt at going forward. "Why do you defy me, red-haired?" roared the mighty dragon. Around him were the forces of the Straw Hat Grand Armada, who if called upon were ready to engage the upcoming forces of the dragon. "Kaido, it is not your time yet," Shanks proclaimed, to which the dragon let out a mighty roar. "Fine red hair, your death then." Kaido began to build up energy inside his mouth and he was going to release a mighty beam. And yet Shanks simply pulled out his blade. "Come then, Kaido." And Kaido released his beam, in which case Shanks caught it with his blade, infused with haki. The clash was intense, almost unbearable for others. But Shanks came out unscathed, and Kaido transformed to his human form. "I'll make you move eventually, Shanks." Behind Kaido, a prehistoric zone flew to his side. He then transformed into his human form, revealing Kane. Next to arrive was Queen, who retained his Brachiosaurus form alongside Jack, in his mammoth form. The Calamity of Kaido were not the only members of the Beast Pirates there. Out came the Flying Six, which were the 6 people in line with becoming all-stars. And then the rest of the Beast Pirates started to appear around the Red Force, surrounding the escape of Shanks. "Sure thing, Kaido," Shanks replied with a smile, remaining confident despite the dire situation. It only appeared dire, but Shanks was not confident for no reason. He had his entire force with him too. Ben Beckman and Usopp shared Shanks' confidence. Buggy rallied the Straw Hats. He feared no one. His goal was to simply put away Alvida, the woman who put him in the hell hole for a very long time. Kaido stared down the Shanks. King was targeting Ben Beckman. Queen felt like he would be mostly entertained by Buggy, who was far from being the joking meaning of clown. Jack cared for no one but looks like he will fight with Usopp. "Go!" commanded Shanks, and another titanic war was commencing, while another occurred on the other side of the New World, Whole Cake Island. Whole Cake Island, Chopper Yaw. How are they holding up? Law had been doing 2 surgical procedures at one time. Daifuku and Oven were suffering immensely from their own mother's power. Critical, damn it. Chopper was trying to resuscitate Smoothie. This was insane. Just goes to show that a Yonko was way above their capabilities. Cracker remained heavily injured, but he tried his best to help his siblings. Raisin was out. Noisette was down. Galette remained gone. It was not a good day for the Charlotte siblings. Jin helped the group carry the people to a proper position. He was tasked with assisting the doctors. Custard, Nougat, and Broy came to their aid. "Emidi, tell us what we can do." Broy and Law looked at one another for a moment. Even if they weren't professionals, they would have to do. This was crazy. The war between the Straw Hats and the Big Mom Pirates was officially underway. Whole Cake War. Vinsmoke Judge versus Charlotte Mont d'Or. "You traitorous bastards." Judge had brought down his mighty poleaxe, and yet Mont d'Or was too quick. A simple side step was enough to avoid the frustrated strike from the Vinsmoke head of household. "Don't hate me, I didn't do it." Mont d'Or was loyal to a fault, willing to die for his mother if it had to come to that. He opened his book of strange oddities and released a stampede of unique and unusual animals that are very rare for the world. The stampede wreaked havoc on the battlefield, but more notably, Judge was stomped by the incoming beast and could not get up. Even with all the time he spent to make himself stronger, to make his children become the perfect weapons, he was about to die from some damn animals. "I won't die." Judge panted as he could barely breathe. The stampede was finally over, but he was laid out. Mont d'Or held a pistol over his head. His book closed for a moment as to hide the other monstrosities in his book of wonders. "Goodbye, Vinsmoke. Thank you for the cloning technology. We will make great use for them." Just as Mont d'Or was going to pull the trigger, a blazing hot kick met the edge of his face. The heroic Sanji came swooping in, saving the man he used to call father. In his tail was Pudding, who swiftly leaned in next to Mont d'Or, and pulled out a string of film in regards to his memory. "Judge." Sanji stood over his father, signifying his growth. Years ago he was turned away by his own family for not being manipulated into a human weapon. "Sanji, you little bastard survived after all." Judge was slow to get up, and Sanji did not even consider helping the man on his feet. When he was finally up, Sanji looked down on him. Judge was hobbled and broken. "It was a good thing I kicked you out after all. Now you're ready to resume your place with your family." "Fuck you, Judge. I will never be part of this family again. Consider this a final courtesy for the blood that we, unfortunately, share. I will never help you again." Sanji tossed his cigar to the chest of Judge, and the man was fuming, though he could not do anything about it. Sanji was no longer his son, and Judge was no longer his father. Judge stood still, watching as his son, no Sanji, left with Pudding. "Mr. Prince, Mama knew of our plan even before we concocted it. And through the memories of Brother Mont d'Or I was able to find the reason why Kaido is helping Big Mom. To think she kept me in the shadow for so long. Mama is truly a mastermind. Excellent work, Pudding. But tell me something." Sanji grabbed Pudding by the waist and pulled her close. Adrenaline was high on his body as confronting his father felt real good. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Prince?" And Pudding blushed and placed her hand over her lips. "Oh my, I only just met you, Mr. Prince. Sanji, call me Sanji, and we are officially married." Sanji held her close, causing her to blush feverishly. Usually he wouldn't be as focused as he would be twirling and jumping at a chance to get close to a female. Though today, due to adrenaline, he was more confident. Good thing too, cause Pudding was smitten. Judge lost to Mont d'Or. Mont d'Or lost to Sanji. And Pudding, well, she lost to Sanji. It wasn't a bad thing as she had given her heart to her now husband, completely switching the meaning of the word lost. Vinsmoke Reiju vs Charlotte Dacquoise. Reiju unleashed her frustration, equipping her raid suit swiftly and catching Dacquoise on the side of his face with a flying kick. Her transformation was mesmerizing, even a lowly foot soldier was able to admire as the poisonous member of the Vinsmoke family transformed into a magnificent-looking butterfly. She did not let up either as despite Dacquoise attempting to escape her wrath, Reiju chased after him and unleashed melted poison on his skin, causing his flight to be interrupted. The Charlotte family member crashed on the ground and passed out. It was an easy victory for the eldest Vinsmoke, and yet she did not feel satisfied. She felt that maybe the Vinsmokes should have died, maybe they actually deserve it for all they did. Her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed something. One sneaky girl was making her way suspiciously towards a very important battle. Not if she could help it, and the butterfly chased after the girl, leaving the defeated Dacquoise in her wake. Dacquoise lost to Reiju. Vinsmoke Ichiji vs Charlotte Bascarte. Number 1, Sparking Red, Vinsmoke Ichiji was fully equipped with his raid suit. He faced a fellow flame user, though Ichiji chose to demolish the child of the woman that ordered his death. Bascarte tried to counter Ichiji's strikes, but he was falling behind. The strike from his brother, Noisette. It wasn't like a deep wound could heal in an instant, he didn't have any massive healing factor. So Bascarte was falling back, but Ichiji would not let up. Maybe this will be his dead bed. He deserved it for following Mama, but they never invited him to join the betrayal party so he wouldn't know. So he unleashed his strongest attack, removing his scarf and releasing a superheated breath from his mouth. That should do it. Bascarte collapsed as the pain in his midsection was too much. But see, Ichiji does not care for things such as sympathy and empathy, all he cared about was absolute victory. So the red Vinsmoke continued his assault, slapping and kicking his enemy without letting up. He was angry due to being betrayed, almost killed, and overall just wasting time on such a weakling. Bascarte was breathing down his own blood, he couldn't retaliate as his earlier wounds were finally getting in his way. Well, it was a good life. Just as Ichiji was going to eliminate him with a blazing kick, cold air covered the surrounding and as swift as the wind, a skeletal man brought out his cane sword to stop the momentum of the fiery man. Soul King, why do you interfere with this weakling? Ichiji tried to push down, to finish Bascarte, but Brook would not let up. His soul has surrendered. Blood should not be shed to those whose pure soul is to live. Brook pushed the Vinsmoke back, allowing an opening for Jin to grab Bascarte from under Brook. The man needs some medical treatment. I don't get you. First you help us and now you help them. Which side are you on? I am a Straw Hat pirate, nothing more, nothing less, answered Brook. If you pursue him, I will have to put a stop to you. Brook released his chilling aura, making the fireman shiver slightly. Though Ichiji does not feel fear, it is not in his DNA. So instead of the obvious response to escape, Ichiji pressed on, which would be his mistake. As Ichiji charged forward, Brook was quick to draw his cane sword, then within a blink of an eye, he had retrieved his weapon. Behind him, Ichiji froze mid-air. The chunk of ice crashed into the ground within the frozen structure. Ichiji cursed and swore, but nobody would hear him, for his soul was stuck in between Brook's freezing soul. I think my age is getting to me. Brook limped slightly and grabbed his humerus bone. I must have pulled a muscle, if I had any. Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho skull joke. Bascarte lost to Ichiji. Ichiji lost to Brook. Vinsmoke Yanji vs Charlotte Effely. Surprising no one, Yanji found himself beaten to a pulp by Charlotte Effely. The female warrior was one of the stronger daughters of Big Mom and her skill was on full display. She wielded a dual pistol that accurately bombarded Yanji, not allowing the youngest child of the Vinsmoke family to retaliate. Though it wasn't in his DNA to feel fear or to run away, so despite losing his mechanical arm, and his metal frame being bombarded, the Green Warrior continued to fight. I love a woman who can beat some sense into me, the green-haired man said, joking despite his predicament. How about death? Effely pointed her dual pistol in the face of Yanji. With one press of the trigger, the youngest of the Vinsmoke would finally meet his end. Though it never got to that, as from the sea, a great warrior saved Yanji from receiving his sentence. Captai Warrior, as he redirected the sea he brought with him to push Effely back. Who the fuck are you? I don't need no help, exclaimed Yanji despite being incapable of moving on his own and remaining on his knees. Ungrateful child. With that statement, Jinbei delivered a wave crashing through Yanji, effectively knocking him out. Namur caught the tail end of the fight and looked at Jinbei with a knowing look. He had it coming. Yanji lost to Effely. Effely lost to Jinbei. Yanji lost to Jinbei. Vinsmoke Niji vs Charlotte St. Mark in a similar manner as his brother, number 2 Dengeki Blue. Niji would not let up against his opponent. Charlotte St. Mark was a hulking figure, though his stature was no match for the crackling energy of Niji's attacks. A punch to the face caused the man to stumble and the blue-haired warrior continued his assault. It was enough so as for the Charlotte child to wish that he wasn't on the receiving end of the beatdown. If only he could sit and play with the flowers once more, to smell the fresh air. And just as Niji was about to deliver a finishing blow, 2 seeds zoomed past over his head, causing him to jump back. Missed me. Though the seeds were right where the marksman wanted them to go, as the seed exploded into giant vine monsters, bonding Niji in all his limbs. Who would dare? Niji looked around in panic, as he could not tell who shot at him. And that was because the marksman wasn't within eyesight, for the marksman was on the other side of the battlefield, fighting alongside the Whitebeard pirates against the chess soldiers. Usopp, did you get it? Nami asked as she unleashed a 100-tile punch through a chess soldier that got too close. Of course, I never miss, replied Usopp, for in fact, the marksman does not miss. Look out, Frankie used his body as a shield as a massive explosion was aimed towards Nami and Usopp. Frangie was quick to shield them, but Nami had crossed her arms and manifested armament to shield herself, while Usopp held his black Kabuto sling in front of him as a shield. Thanks Frankie, exclaimed Nami. That wasn't very super of you. Frankie turned around, swiftly facing the enemy which fired off the shot. For before the trio of Straw Hats was a tall and bulky masked figure, wearing an all-white attire with his hair swimming around him. Leave this to me, Nami exclaimed, to which Frankie and Usopp agreed, returning to the battle against the chess soldiers. Meanwhile, Nami twirled her climb attack, while also forming her hands into a fist. She was serious, and this masked figure was about to learn how serious she was. St. Mark lost to Niji. Niji lost to Usopp. Nami vs CP0 Agent. Champion of the Sea, Arlong vs Streusen. Not gonna lie, it's been a while since I stretched these old bones. Arlong twirled his arms as Streusen missed once more. The personal chef of Big Mom was strong in his own right, but Arlong was simply stronger. Fool, do you know who I am? Streusen took out his kitchen knife and caught Arlong's saw blade, skillfully cutting it into food. For Streusen could make anything he touches into food. I didn't like that sword anymore, anyway. He then retrieved the golden trident which hung on his back, the same golden trident that belonged to Prince Fukaboshi, the hero of Fishman Island. He twisted and twirled it and tried as the chef may. He was unable to cut the golden trident, for Arlong infused the trident with his will. His golden resolve to always protect his people. And now that the captain had returned, his goal had shifted back to making the captain into king. Therefore his resolve was stronger than ever before. "There is no object that I can't make into food." Streusen jumped forward, delivering a serving of fish fillet gun parts, trying to irk the fishman, which worked. "You think this is a damn joke?" Arlong swung his golden trident at the chef, to which the chef was able to duck down due to the wild swing. "For once we have created a utopia for humans and fishman to coexist, and here we have people like you to throw insults at my people?" Streusen struck a nerve with his fish trick. Typical hot-headed fish, he knew he would find an opening eventually. Streusen continued to cut things up along his ship, throwing them at Arlong and making him angrier. An octopus tail here, salmon belly there, and Arlong was fuming. Just as the elderly chef got close to his mast, Arlong disappeared from his spot, faster than anything Streusen could comprehend. Then within a blink of an eye, Streusen was pinned to the mast, by the same golden trident that Arlong held so dear. Streusen tried to speak, but he could not as his lungs were flooding with blood. "Good riddance, you despicable piece of shit." Arlong was holding the other end of the trident, burying it further to the chef. Streusen gasped to try and gather air, but it was too late, as the old man took his last breath. He thought it was over, that he had done his part and he would just have to monitor the sea. But it was not over, as standing on the bow of the ship was a masked figure, wearing an all-white suit. In front of him were the bodies of Karubi and Icarus Much. The two members of his crew were out cold. "You got a death wish." Arlong stared deathly into the eye-hole of the masked figure before him, though the figure simply turned its head as if to mock Arlong. He was dubbed as the strongest fishman in all the land. For this masked figure to not fear him, why, he must be strong. To measure his skill, Arlong took the same golden trident that was covered in Streusen's blood, letting the old chef fall lifeless into the deck, and tossed it at the masked man. The golden trident of Prince Fukaboshi weighed 1/4 of a ton, so it was definitely not light. Though the masked figure easily caught the golden trident with his right hand. In fact, to put emphasis on insulting the strongest commander, the masked man tossed the golden trident into the ocean, effectively spitting on the memory of the fallen prince who once owned the trident. In frustration, Arlong chose to tackle the masked bastard into the ocean. If he was a fruit user, he'd die; if he wasn't, he would be in Arlong's domain. Streusen is killed by Arlong. Karubi lost to CP0 agent. Icarus Much lost to CP0 agent. Arlong vs CP0 agent. Roronoa Zoro vs Gaspard. Not only did Zoro annihilate the candy logia, but he made it so that the man could not reform to his human form, as Zoro had diced him into pieces, and separated his parts in between ocean water. He achieved this feat by creating a hole deep enough for ocean water to seep through and by isolating different parts of Gaspard so that he could no longer reform. This was no match for Zoro, but what he saw in the distance made his blood boil as his friends started falling like flies, by a suspicious masked figure. Gaspard lost to Zoro. Mad Monk, Uroge vs Charlotte counter. Mad Monk Uroge kept getting pounded by counter. Not once did he try to counter well, counter. A right punch to his face, then an uppercut through his face. Then a kick through his guys and a shoulder tackle that took his breath away. And yet Uroge let it happen. Why would he? It was because of his abilities, that whatever damage he took, he would use it into his own raw power. So each strike of counter was making Uroge bigger and bigger until he towered over the Charlotte child. Counter finally understood his mistake as he looked up on the giant monk, who had a smile on his face. "My turn?" And Uroge used his enlarged fist to return Counter's strike from earlier, and unleash a flurry of strikes that pinned Counter to the group. Uroge was deadly but merciful. The fallen Big Mom pirate didn't see it coming as the Mad Monk stood tall. Uroge brought both hands together as the man was unmoving, and he took a bow, as if to show respect for the fight that they shared. Then 2 more people joined him as they too were done with their battles. Wiper held Baby 5 as a bazooka, but she reverted to her human form, now sitting on top of his shoulder. "This is crazy, isn't it?" exclaimed Fun. "This is normal for us when Captain Luffy is in charge," replied the monk with a massive grin over his face. Then like an elegant flower, a swordsman came swiftly cutting Uroge on his back. The pain of the cut was enough to make the massive man fall on both knees. Though suspiciously enough, the cuts weren't one, it was multiple cuts all over Aruja's body. Wiper immediately reacted, with Baby 5 turning into a chainsaw which Wiper wielded. Though they were too slow as the masked agent plowed through them, utterly destroying them. Now Wiper and Baby 5 laid in their own pool of blood, Uroge unable to move due to the injuries by the Cypher Pole agent. The man with the all-white suit was about to slay the 3 fallen warriors when 3 swords came rushing at him. The CP0 agent was quick enough to dodge, though his mask would not be able to stay on from the incoming strike. The green-haired swordsman stood in front of his fallen friends, defending them. He had a crazed look in his eyes as he was short on time. His friends were running out of blood and he had to fight this very strong opponent. And as the mask fell off, his face was finally revealed. The man behind the agent mask had long flowing blonde hair, blue eyes, and his mouth hung agape into a deadly smile. "Who the hell are you?" Zoro placed his sword in his mouth, preparing himself for his battle against this blonde-haired swordsman. "Hakuba," said the blue-eyed swordsman, launching himself forward and clashing with Zoro, and to the man's surprise, this Hakuba man was very skilled and quick. Counter lost to Uroge. Cabaletta lost Wiper. Gala lost to Baby 5. Uroge, Wiper and Baby lost to CP0 agent Zoro vs CP0 Hakuba. Thousand Plant Kuro vs Needles. Kuro stood over Needles, for the Gaspard pirates had fallen at the hands of the strategist. His claws were weak compared to his as his will was just that much stronger. Kuro immediately noticed that his friend was in trouble and rushed to his aid. Needles lost to Kuro. Kaku vs Shiraya. Kaku was poking at the unmoving body of Shiraya. Komi and bro, where was all the big talk earlier? The fallen man would not move anymore, which largely disappointed Kaku. Though his confidence would immediately be crushed by the arrival of a very strong opponent as he found himself with a hole through his chest. He stumbled backwards as a masked figure had appeared from before him. It had to be a woman based on the figure, but her mask could only mean one thing. Cypher Pole Aegis 0. I am. Funny enough, the agent removed her mask, revealing a blonde-haired beauty that had short hair. Stussy is the name Kaku. I'm sure you are familiar. Damn. Kaku knew his faith as this particular agent had 100% success rate. She never failed her mission, never. As he was bleeding out, gasping for air, Stussy was going to cut his head off, effectively sending a message to the Straw Hats that the CP0 were out for him. Though she was never able to do so as a set of cat-like claw blades intercepted her knife. The man who intercepted was none other than Kuro, who was done with his fight with Needles. "Begone, you wretched creature." Kuro proclaimed, though deep down he knew he was outmatched. And yet he had to look strong for his friend. Shiraya lost to Kaku. Kaku lost to CP0 Stussy. Kuro vs CP0 Stussy. Queen Boa Hancock vs Charlotte Capote. The eldest female of the children of Big Mom stood over Hancock, the Queen of the Sea, on her knees by the attack of Capote. How did this happen? How did she become so careless? One moment she was on her feet and the next she was down. Surprised, Capote extended her arms, to which her voice carried a powerful shriek, enough so to make Hancock's head feel very heavy. She tried to close her ears, but the pain continued to echo throughout her body. Echo. Her voice. That was it. She was an echo human. That's got to be it. All she had to do was stop her from speaking, and her ability would be fully nullified. So Hancock immediately released her grip on her ears and ate the powerful echo that was released by the enemy. Capote was all smiles as she released her powerful voice, blood escaping from the ears of Hancock. But she had a goal, and it was simple: to release Medusa. Hancock created her slave arrow, aimed at Capote. She released the arrows and completely missed Capote. Such futile attempt. Beauty is measured by strength, and you are but a weak soul, exclaimed Capote, causing more pain throughout Hancock's body as she found herself collapsing on the ground. Though her slave arrow didn't have to hit Capote, as Medusa manifested from the missed arrow, Capote swiftly turned around and opened her mouth, unleashing a powerful voice that effectively imploded Medusa into tiny pieces. That's all. Capote turned around once more, thinking that she was victorious, but what she found was Hancock delivered a powerful roundhouse kick straight to her face. It had so much frustration and power behind it that Capote was sent into the air. Hancock followed through by continuing her deadly assault of kicks. Capote was out cold, with Hancock standing tall over her fallen body. Luffy was going to give her such a hard time for struggling against Capote. She chuckled to herself as she effectively collapsed. It was a bad matchup for her, but she still came out on top. Capote lost to Hancock. Demon Child, Nico Robin vs Charlotte Amode. Time to find the road poneglyph. Her built-up frustration was enough to gain Robin the upper hand against Amode, as she overwhelmed the enemy with her limbs. Amode was not even able to breathe as Robin stood on top. Her primary mission was to obtain the ever-so-elusive road poneglyph that caused their crew's demise. 2 years ago they lost their chance, and yet here they were given another chance to right their wrongs. All thanks to Luffy. Her Luffy. She blushed at the thought and shook it off. For the moment, she had something important to do. Amode lost to Robin. Robin going deep into Big Mom's territory to obtain her road poneglyph. Capone, Gang, Big vs Charlotte. Kadeza. Big smoked his cigar as Kadeza sized him. The powerhouse was the first to strike as he brought his hockey-infused fist forward. Though his fist would never reach the gang boss as he was shrunk into a tiny little creature as he entered Bega's range. His rapid descent was met with a gang of Bega's men within his body, to which they immediately ganged up on him. Big smiled to himself as he made his legs into a tank tire and traveled through the battlefield, with Kadeza disappearing from the world. Now where was he headed? To Chiffon's room to take her things, as Big was determined to move his beloved wife away from this damned land. To get there he would have to steal a boat, then travel to her island where she was the Minister of Puff. When Big was making his way to the dock, he was stopped by a body falling directly in front of him. It was a fried man who was still twitching from getting massively electrocuted. Big looked back and found that Enel was floating by, delivering his handiwork. I apologize for the intrusion of Big, but the Eggman was needed to put in his place, said Enel as he stood alongside Big. Nah, don't worry about it, Big replied, but he had to go get his wife, stuff, so he left in a hurry. See you, he called out. Enel waved goodbye at Big, but he felt something coming at a rapid rate. Thank God for his reaction time, as Enel was able to substitute himself into pure lightning, appearing behind Big. Big was confused as he felt a strong wind on his back. As he turned around, all he could see was a crackle of electricity along with a bright beam of yellow light, diverting away from him. If Enel would have been even a millisecond late, a hole would have been on the back of Bega's head. Oh, well. If it isn't the prison rat. The two figures landed on the far mountains of Whole Cake Island. Their momentum brought them far away as what would be necessary for their climactic battle. Kizaru. It had been some time. Enel had intercede of the one and only Marine Admiral Kizaru. Kadeza lost to Big. Tamago lost to Enel. Enel vs Admiral Kizaru. The Marines are here. Whitebeard pirates with Straw Hat pirates vs chess soldiers. The Marines have arrived, floating the shores of Whole Cake Island, engaging both the Big Mom pirates and the Straw Hat pirates. Usopp and Frankie had their hands full as they engaged the hot-blooded Marines. Sanji, who brought his wife, Pudding, with him and joined his crewmate. Jinbei came along with Brook as the two eldest of the crew went to work on the Marines who pushed their forces back. Vista found himself in collision with a particularly powerful soldier, one of which was not supposed to be here. It was in his understanding that there was a party that was supposed to stall these people. Surprised to see you here, Marine, said Vista, allowing his flower to circle around the enemy swordsman's blade. Yeah, well, here we are, replied Marine Vice Admiral Momonga. Vista vs Vice Admiral Momonga. Blamenko brought out a net and an axe from his cheek pocket, as his enemy was very powerful. Vice Admiral Doberman had arrived, whose men were fighting their forces. Blamenko vs Vice Admiral Doberman. Izo tried to fight the separate limbs of the enemy. He was a skillful swordsman due to being a samurai of Wano, but his enemy was a Vice Admiral of the Marine, so he had his work cut out for him. No biggie, just Vice Admiral Onigumo. Izo vs Vice Admiral Onigumo. Across the ways was Marco, who found himself having to melt a flurry of plant life that threatened to bury him. He took several steps back as he continued to be bombarded by the plants. Oi, enough already, Marco called, knowing full well who had come for him. No can do, Phoenix, for I, Admiral Ryokugayu, will put you to your place. Marco vs Admiral Ryokugayu. Diamond Jozu found himself in a predicament, for despite his indestructible nature, he was being pounded by a certain purple-haired admiral. It was a matter of if Zephyr could destroy Diamond with his bare fist, or if Jozu could hold out. Truly a difficult situation. Jozu vs Admiral Zephyr. Whitebeard tossed an enemy across the battlefield. He was wanting to join the fight against Linlin, but he knew that he would be needed here, due to the fact that some strong people had finally arrived. Whitebeard instinctively ducked down, as a fist of magma was out to get him. Newgate, I shall deliver absolute justice over your decapitated head. Before Whitebeard was a fearless marine admiral, who stood in the sea of pirates to make sure that he would face off with Whitebeard. Garara, you're 10 years too early to challenge me, dog. Whitebeard and Akainu were now the same age due to the age manipulation that Bonnie performed. And if the normal timeline saw Whitebeard decimate Akainu, what would this timeline bring? Whitebeard vs Admiral Akainu, Sand King, Crocodile vs Charlotte Opera. Crocodile had drained Opera of his fluids, effectively shrinking the size of the former massive man into nothing but a wrinkled old suit. He wasn't dead, just extremely dehydrated. Crocodile tossed Opera to the side only to find himself surrounded by white smoke. Well, if it isn't the sand. Before him was a white-haired man, scarred from his experience as a marine. He removed his shades, revealing his deadly gaze. Along his mouth were 3 cigars, as he covered his surroundings with white smoke. And the smoked fucker. Crocodile had a bone to pick with this particular man, as this was the man who cuffed him and put him in his cell and impelled down. This was going to be sweet, sweet revenge. No cuffs on me this time. Opera lost to Crocodile. Crocodile vs Vice Admiral Smoker. Hawkeye, Dracule. Mahawk vs Charlotte. Snack. Was it even a question? 11 years ago. Mahawk utterly destroyed Snack in the mirror world. And fast forward to present time. And Snack was still a weakling, and Mahawk was now the strongest swordsman in the world. Though Mahawk immediately felt something heavy, as if he was being weighed down. Finally a worthy opponent. For before him was a swordsman, his blade slightly exposed to release a little bit of his ability. Finally someone to challenge him. Today you rest in the depth of hell, Hawkeye. The swordsman pulled out his blade, multiplying the level of gravitational intensity. Though Mahawk remained unfazed, despite feeling the pressure. We'll see, Fujitora. And once more, Yuru is out for blood. Snack lost to Mahawk. Mahawk vs Admiral Fujitora. Dogtooth, Katakuri vs Charlotte. Perispero. Perispero was no match for his younger brother. Katakuri was beating him at every turn, smashing through his hardened candy shield with his mochi mace. His candy shattered into hundreds of pieces as Perispero was becoming more and more desperate. His brother has grown into an even more powerful warrior than he remembered while he relaxed and lived out his days in the safety of Big Mom's name. This would be his ultimate downfall as Katakuri continued to bombard him with Mochi Fist, manifesting from donut holes that floated around Katakuri. Perispero was on the floor, unable to move due to the beatdown, though that wasn't really the primary event of this war, for the Marines were here, and more importantly, the hero was before him. "We need to talk," said the old man. If it was anyone else, Katakuri would have attacked them. "What for?" asked Dogtooth. "Not here." And just like a typhoon, Garp delivered a powerful punch that sent the former emperor to the edge of Whole Cake Island. Away from all the craziness. To talk about something, whatever that meant. Perispero lost to Katakuri. Kataru vs Vice Admiral Garp. On the belly of the largest marine ship, 4 figures were scouting the prison unit. "No, not you," said a woman, whose glasses were swirled. "Any luck, Knighton?" called out a gorilla, one of which happened to be named Scarlet. The tall gorilla was knocking out every pirate who tried to pretend like they were the person he was looking for, effectively eliminating any imposer. "Hurry on and keep looking, you buffoon. We have to find him, we have to find him," called out a clown man, whose hair was a funky color of blue. "Hey, be a little nicer to Scarlet, Indigo," said Gairam, though still no luck. On another cell block, 2 more people were looking for their target. One was Biojak, who has since obtained a muscular feature along with a healthier appearance. He was no longer the sickly man that relied on Brandy for anything. Sebastian worked with Biojak to find their target, but he too had no luck. Until finally, The person they were looking for caught a painful tune. That's who they were looking for, and they found him. They finally located. Who the hell are you people? Bojack was in front of his cell, with Sebastian obtaining the key and opening it. Hello Morgans, we are the Straw Hat Pirates. Care to join us? Asked Bojack as he was now joined by Knighton, Gyrom, Scarlet, and Indigo. The four not believing that they were beat out by Bojack on finding their target. Kuahaha, so he comes for me then. Morgans got up, dusted his dirty attire and opened his wings. Fine then, let's join the party, called Morgans, as he obtained the key to release his staff who had a bone to pick with the Marines. And yet people must have forgotten that the titanic battle between two emperors were underway, Big Mom against Mugiwara. Years of built-up animosity was finally coming to full head, as the strongest woman in the world was going against the strongest man in the world, East Blue. In the Sea of the East Blue, a small ship containing 10 royal guards of Alabasta and one blue-haired princess. Amongst the royal guards was Pell, the strongest warrior of Alabasta, who watched over the princess. It is his duty to watch over the princess with his life, and despite being against her decision to leave her kingdom to see Mugiwara, he was their savior, the man who gave them rain in the olden times. Gosh, has it been that long already? Pell, I see it. I see his home island. The princess of Alabasta was politically savvy, well respected, and sought after by many suitors. But she never really got over her first love, the man who punched his way to her heart. She thought he was dead and yet, here he was, back from the dead. Ah, I see that princess, replied the guard, though suddenly he felt an evil intent. Princess, Pell immediately used his body as a shield while the entire roof of the room was wiped clear off. Above them was a red-haired man with two mechanical arms, one in which had a sadistic smile over his face. Well, what do I have here? Who the hell are you? Asked Vivi, demanding an answer as she brought out her twin peacock slasher. Not that it was any good as the man just pulled in her metallic weapon. A man looking for a date with your hubby, replied the magnetic man. And suddenly, his metallic arm was sent at Vivi, only for Pell to kick the metal objects away from the princess he swore to protect with his life. Defiant, I see. With that, the red-haired man unleashed a flurry of metallic objects, hurled at the head guard of Alabasta. He dodged and twisted, kicked and punched while maintaining the safety of the princess. He took a metal pipe through the thigh that was meant for the princess, a spike of scrap metal through his forearm that would have pierced through her. The red-haired man smiled sadistically. This will be fun. His onslaught continued until finally, the stamina of the Alabasta warrior was fully deflated. Try as he may, Pell was no match for this new world captain, and Vivi could only do so much as she was the primary target of the crazed man. I've grown tired of you. And Kid, the man which tormented them that day, grabbed Pell with his metal hand and squeezed him into submission. Then, like the bastard that he is, he tossed Pell into the open ocean water, knowing full well that the zone would not be able to swim. No, Pell. Vivi tried to swim after her friend, but Kid had other ideas, as she was also encased in a metal confinement. Calm down, woman, everyone dies eventually. You will too, after you've served your purpose. Kid then brought her metal encasing aboard his ship, the Victoria Punk, and tried as she may, Vivi was not going to be able to get out of this one. So aboard the Punk Victoria, she was forced to enter the dungeon, where she was bound by her arms. Kid then left her and closed the dark dungeon prison of the ship. Hello. Hello. Vivi tried to scream, to no avail as nobody would hear her. Tears welled up in her eyes in desperation. Who is this guy and why did she go after her? And Pell must be dead. Oh God, what will she do now? Is anyone there? A female voice called out from the other end of her cell. Vivi immediately perked up at some company. Hello. I am Vivi of Alabasta, here against my will. Called Vivi, the voice which spoke was weak, possibly held against her will. The light shined in her face for a moment, only to reveal the beautiful face of Princess Viola of Dressrosa. I am as well. I reckon you were on your way to see Luffy as well? Asked the princess. To which Vivi nodded slowly. For some reason, they are after him. This kid guy has a force of 9 strong New World captains. What should we do? What we can. Wait, and with that they entered a period of silence, desperation and anger. For the two women were strong political figures, strong individual women, and here they were being used as leverage against him. These pirates will pay. Though up above, they could hear him on the loudspeaker, spouting off some threat. Possibly towards Dawn Island, where Luffy should be. I got Nefertari Vivi aboard this damn ship, and Riku Viola. You better show yourself Mugiwara, exclaimed Kid, to which the air was filled with silence, then explosions and then more silence. Suddenly the roof of the ship was ripped clean off by an unfamiliar face. He was a black-haired young man, with the ace of spades tattooed along his forearm. Though when he tried to reach down to free them, an invisible barrier pushed him backwards. Then the two princesses couldn't see anything again until the ship was suddenly frozen. And around them, shadow figures emerged and made their way out of the hole. A man fell through the hole and was cradled, crying while saying that he was useless. Vivi and Viola shared a look. What the hell was going on up there? Whole Cake Island in the island of Chiffon. Big was finally able to gather her things, not missing even a single dress as he emptied out her castle. If he missed anything, he would be dead. She made that clear, and nothing is scarier than a woman's fury. So he gathered all of her things and eventually left, returning to the main island to regroup with everyone. And what he found was insanity, as Marines, Straw Hat Pirates, Whitebeard Pirates, and Big Mom Pirates were engaged in an all-out battle. Crazy, huh? Beside him, Robin appeared from out of nowhere. She had a grin on her face as she pocketed a mirror. Tell me about it. Did you get the road poneglyph? Asked Big, as one of the strategists of the crew. He knew the entirety of the plan. Yup, I placed it in Brulee's mirror world just as planned, replied Robin casually. Oh, you know, just another day in taking a road poneglyph from a Yonko. Alright, well, ready to join the craziness? Asked Big, transforming himself into a tank. Sure, let's go. Robin crossed her hands and manifested a set of beautiful wings made out of her hands. Mille fleur. Alas, and Robin began to fly after Big, joining the massive war which they were currently living through. Open sea, there was a war across the ocean, where two other emperors were going against one another. Shanks and Kaido exchanged blows, evenly matched in their conquest for dominance. Beckman was contesting the power of King. Queen stood over the struggling figure of Buggy. And Jack could not get close to Usopp, but the sniper could not damage the mammoth. Though Shanks had two massive miscalculations. 1. Kaido had figured out a way to resurrect his dead card from his deck. Joker. The string user went through the battlefield, first going through Daz's bones and pinning him on the ground with his string ability. Senor Pink and Django were stringed together, allowing the numbers they were facing to play with them like a soccer ball. How did he achieve this feat? Well, it was quite simple, as Kaido laughed internally, the memory of his dealings with the world still clear in his mind. 20 years ago, he took control of Wano, under the puppet daimyo of Orochi. 9 years ago, tomorrow, send the Flying Six to kill 1 or 2 of Linlin's children. This will teach her to stay in her territory. To that the 3 calamities can agree to the plan. A massive smile on their individual faces. Chapter 23. Though the Flying Six went and returned with Big Mom, who went willingly and had an offer for Kaido. Leave her island alone, and in exchange she would revive his precious Joker back into his former glory. Though there would be a catch, he would be zombie-like, with no emotions or aspiration, just servitude to the dragon. Kaido took the deal with another caveat: he would owe her one, which he promptly accepted, obtaining the service of a Joker once more, which had no thoughts but to follow his orders. 4 years ago, the favor which he owed would end up stopping the Whitebeard pirates from interfering with her war with Katakuri's Straw Hats. All they had to do was dead Whitebeard's land and get out, causing Whitebeard to miss his chance to help his friends. Rororo fools. 1 year development, Kaido was able to control the black market, and more importantly, be involved in a devil fruit dealing with Blackbeard. In exchange, he provided him with masterful crafted weapons exclusive only to Wano. A fruitful relationship that sort of made them business partners. Allies? Hell no, as their pride and ambition was too big. Shanks' second miscalculation was not accounting for this alliance, as Blackbeard appeared from thin air, fresh from his massacre of Dawn Island, with victory already plastered across his face. Zihahaha, red-haired, how is the scar treating you? asked Blackbeard, in which case annoyed Shanks greatly, though their predicament was more dire than that, as the 9 Titanic captains of Blackbeard were present, and it had become a hopeless situation. There was only one way out of this one: someone will have to be left behind. So with a powerful swing of his blade, he created a ripple on the group, bringing out his superior haki through the cracks as if to warn anyone of crossing the line. A line appeared from all the fighters separating them. Ben was separated from his clash with Kane, Buggy's bloody form was pulled from Queen, and Usopp just had to keep his distance, as Jack could not even reach him. "Ben, I order you to retreat now." He never once turned around, though his order was loud and clear. "But what about you, Captain?" "This I must do," replied Shanks, to which he sent out another pulse of his haki to send back the Beast Pirates and the Blackbeard Pirates. Buggy regretfully agreed with Shanks. They had to retreat. Without the captain, they stood no chance against 2 Yonko crews. "A noble sacrifice, Red Hair," exclaimed Kaido, now morphing into his dragon form, preparing his massive breath attack. "But nobody will escape today." Kaido unleashed his breath, creating a massive destruction in the near vicinity. But with his sword, Shanks absorbed the strike, cutting it so as to not allow it to reach his retreating friends. Meanwhile, Teach simply watched, as his presence was enough to cause a panic within the red-haired, Straw Hat Alliance. Though the zombie Joker was a nice touch, he liked how Kaido operated. "What the hell is going on out here?" A small man with a round plump nose arrived via a massive golden ship. He wore a gold kimono signifying his stature. "Go home, Orochi, you don't need to be involved in this," called Kaido, to which the large man responded. "Fine, Kaido, but hurry along. News of their arrival is spreading throughout the land. We need to take care of this," yelled Orochi before ordering his ship to turn around, as his daily stroll was rudely interrupted by these damn invaders. Little did Orochi know that these invaders were as powerful as Kaido. "Hurry after them," exclaimed the Beast Pirates, with the 9 Titanic captain remaining dormant, waiting for their captain's orders. The All-Stars and Toby Roppo had grown bored of the exchange, leaving as soon as the fight had left. Interestingly enough, King and Shiryu exchanged a deadly look, and Avalo Pizarro shook hands with Queen. They had a fire festival to prepare for, and Blackbeard continued to watch as they fled. Like the cockroaches that they are. He laughed as Kaido and Shanks continued to exchange blows. Then Shanks was fighting for his life. The allies would be long gone when Shanks finally met his downfall. Once he did, the crew immediately chained him with a new breed of sea prism cuffs. "You will die in the grandest way possible, red-haired," Kaido addressed the kneeling Yonko. "We are done here, Teach." To which Teach smirked, ordering his crew to turn their ships. "Sure, Kaido, just send me the weapons." Blackbeard then began to walk away, once again coming out on top against the former cabin boy of Roger. "You did well," said a voice within his head. "A public execution for the famed red-haired Shanks during the fire festival," exclaimed Kaido, to which the remaining Beast Pirates cheered. This was a way to flame out the time-traveling bugs, along with demanding a war with Mugiwara. Yes, Mugiwara, who's taking care of Linlin for him. Whole cake war in this sweet land, where the matches are set. Not a single soul could know the events which would transpire that day. Luffy, the promised child, is warring with Big Mom, the remnant of the past. His allies were present, some were arriving a little later than the other. The arrival of the Marines was unexpected, yet it was not detrimental, for as long as Luffy had Big Mom in a one-on-one battle, it would be just fine. For in this moment, Mugiwara was going to cement his claim, for the sole Emperor of the Sea. Emperor Mugiwara, Monkey D. Luffy versus Emperor Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin. Once more the Emperor unleashed her full power. It had been a long time coming since she wanted to personally kill Mugiwara. She thought she missed her chance when he apparently died, but he was actually alive all this time. Their exchange was magnificent, a spectacle for each punch unleashed by Big Mom. Luffy would match her, not a single one of them was gaining an advantage over the other. Luffy had reverted on going into awakening, filling the area with rubber qualities. Though that wasn't the extent of his abilities, for thanks to Hancock, he was able to discover something else about himself. It wasn't the time to reveal it yet, as he was not struggling from the Emperor, and neither was she. On a more minor note, she got free, Flamp got out of her bondage, and her first order of business was to help Mama, to slow Mugiwara for even just half a step. So she snuck past the battles, the bodies, and the chaos. She got into position and found herself near enough to launch her darts. Luffy sensed her arrival. He sensed her will to smite him. And yet Luffy did not need to do anything about her, as a beautiful butterfly swooped down and slammed the smug child into the ground for her attempt to interrupt his battle with Big Mom. Luffy smiled to himself as he felt who it was, number 0 of the Vinsmoke family, Poison Pink, Reiju. Without needing to turn around, Luffy thanked the pink-haired beauty. "Good looking out," called out Luffy as he jumped from an incoming thunderstrike from Zeus. He didn't need the help, but he sure appreciated it. Reiju stared at him for just a moment as she returned to the battle, and her eyes twinkled at what she saw. In her mind all she could think of was, delicious, as she licked her lips at such a tasty snack of a man. Luffy smirked at her obvious lust for him, but he had something to deal with. He'll say hi to her later. He knew they were watching, his queens were. And to ensure that he was going to get some of the best nights of his life, Luffy decided to show off a little. Big Mom delivered a Prometheus-infused flaming punch at Luffy, to which he casually dodged, and Luffy kicked the Yonko straight through her ugly mug. Big Mom stumbled slightly but quickly recovered, only to find Luffy in her face, with a massive gear third fist straight through her skull. That one was for Robin. Once again Big Mom took more step backwards, now drifting away from the whole cake chateau. Her overarching belief that she would come out victorious with the head of Mugiwara was starting to become nothing but a bleak dream. Luffy pursued her, launching a rain of jet gatling that met Big Mom head-on, causing her to stumble several more steps backwards. That one was for Hancock. He then brought his rubber arms together, twisting them into a complicated knot and smashing down directly onto Big Mom's head. Not even Napoleon could stop the rapid descent of the strongest man of the world. That one was for Reiju. Then he was broken out of his streak by remembering his promise with Viola and Vivi. He wondered if they still think about him. Now that she was of age, would Vivi still remember his promise? Would Viola remember their love? Or did she move on? For crying out loud, this was frustrating. In Big Mom's mind, the man was the real deal. At first she would not believe that Newgate would come out the loser against this scrawn now. Big Mom's confidence was replaced with desperation as the man was pushing her to her limits. In her lowest point, she could do it, but that would cause the collapse of her kingdom, her entire work. She could not do it, that was a last resort. But if it meant coming out victorious, then so be it. For now she openly challenged the Straw Hat Man by defying his push to be the king. She brought Napoleon straight down his thick skull, and yet he took the strike head-on, once more countering her power move with his absolute defense. Zeus' thunder was ineffective against the rubber man, and only Prometheus was giving him a little bit of trouble, and by a little it truly was minor. She would have to endure his strike, maybe then he would finally give way. But the piece of shit was able to survive 9 years in ice, so his endurance was out of this world. Big Mom hopped on the back of Zeus, launching herself in the sky. A streak of purple lightning trailing her, trying to strike down her pursuer. Though that wasn't her goal, for her goal was quite simple. Mugiwara followed her using his bound man form to chase her up. The higher they went, the more her smile grew, as she was baiting him, telling him to follow her. Luffy looked up, chasing at the fleeing emperor. This could not be it, as she was an emperor of the sea, so why was she fleeing? Then his answer was finally revealed as a storm of lightning and sunfire surrounded Luffy and the sky. Below them, people looked up as they saw that the sky was covered by the hellfire and black lightning. Luffy looked around him, as Big Mom had guised herself in the chaos, effectively splitting her presence into 4. One of which would represent one of the homies. If he had to guess, she would have to be the one due north, as she was a true representation of pride and she would not take anything else but the north. So Luffy charged forward, unleashing a massive King Kong gun straight through the cloud and finally connecting with Napoleon the bicorn blade. In confusion Luffy looked around him, finding that the 3 other beings were no longer there, and instead the 3 powers were merged and raining down on him. For Big Mom was now coming down from the sky, like a meteor from outer space, crashing down on the unsuspecting pirate. Luffy brought both arms in front of him, covering himself in armament. He tried to defend himself as much as he could, But Big Mom's full weight, plus the rapid descent, combing with the force generated by a back burner created by Prometheus and energy created by Zeus. Luffy had no choice but to meet the crash head-on. His rapid descent felt like his soul left his body, staying in the hellfire and thunder-covered sky. But in a blink of an eye, he was sent from the sky to the ground, and further down he went as Big Mom's momentum was truly astronomical. Though it was strange, as Luffy saw his vision flicker. Oh no, he was going to see Big Mom's life. Mother Caramel. Where are you, Mother Caramel? This was the thought of a young Big Mom, overlooking the ocean. She had been waiting for days, waiting for the return of dear old Mother Caramel. Her purpose was to create a world where Mother Caramel would be happy, a world where all her friends could have fun and enjoy themselves. A world where all people could live together in harmony, and yet she was very misguided. She was a child at heart, and if anyone opposed her, she would use her full force to discipline them. Fast forward several days to which Stroozan found her, convincing her of a world where she could have peace and harmony between all the races of people. And she bit. Interesting enough, Stroozan took this partnership as his stepping stone to major prominence, a world where he could cook any food that he wanted and serve any food that he wanted, and Linlin's stomach was insatiable. Then, in order to grow her strength, Linlin ventured out to find people in her new land, but she ended up losing to a very powerful man. Zebek was his name. She ended up joining him for some time to gain knowledge on her goal, his goal to be the queen of the pirates. By doing so, she would have a monopoly on the world, and nobody could defy her, nobody. In her crew were Kaido, Shiki, Whitebeard, John, Shaki. Bunch of weaklings, not one could measure to her ambitions. Linlin ended up leaving the Rocks Pirate due to God's Valley incident, where Zebek lost to Garp. When she thought she found a man that could measure to her expectation, well, she was mistaken. So this newfound discovery that not a single man could be enough for her caused her to realize what she needed to do. For she needed to produce children, partner with different races of men to make sure that her reign would encompass all. From then onward, she became known as Big Mom. Throughout the entirety of the vision, Luffy could care less. In fact, he barely paid attention, as he really did not care about what her past was. All he cared about was the present in regards to Big Mom. His current predicament was dire. As the memory finally disappeared, he found himself under the full weight of the crashing Big Mom, unable to move a single muscle. Luffy must have lost consciousness several times as his back collided with the solid earth behind him. His poor judgment caused this to happen, and now he had to pay for it. He had to pay for it with his body. Just as her momentum finally slowed, the massive crater created by her impact was enough for the ocean water to begin flooding in. Big Mom hopped away from his broken body and let the ocean water crash on top of him, and such is the form of the crater, the ocean water was headed straight for his unmoving body. Try as he may, he was unable to move. He looked up as the ocean water was starting to filter in. Any minute now he was going to be swallowed by the sea that he loved so dearly. It was his time then. Too bad he wasn't able to achieve the stuff he set out to achieve. Damn, he will die once more, this time it was permanent. But he can't go, not quite yet. He had a promise, he had to keep it, no matter what. He could not die, or Hancock and Robin will kill him. The promise which he gave Viola and Vivi would be empty, and he would never know if Nami truly felt a certain way about him. His friends would kill him too, his armada and his allies. He was not going to die from this, hell to the fucking no. And to his surprise, his body suddenly stood up, despite the pain, despite the fatigue, he was up on his feet. The ocean water was coming closer and closer, attempting to fill the void left by the female emperor. He yelled for his body to respond, to move, and yet he was stuck on both feet, and the ocean water was finally in his face. This was his limit, this was it. You must survive. A voice echoed throughout his mind as the ocean water came crashing down on him. Who was that voice? Though more importantly, energy drained throughout his body as he began to submerge in the ocean water. He was getting weaker and weaker by being underwater. Though from the depth of the earth, he felt trembling as something was making its way up, and it spoke to him. Hang on. Called whatever, to which Luffy was confused. What did that mean? Who was speaking to him? And suddenly, a black staff emerged from underneath him. And with every ounce of his strength, Luffy grabbed onto the staff, which then launched him straight up. The speed of the launch was so quick that it only took a moment for Luffy to emerge back to the surface of the whole cake chateau, where Big Mom was waiting. "I knew that wasn't enough to kill you," called out Big Mom. But Luffy would have been dead if it wasn't for this black staff. Luffy caught his breath as he stared down Big Mom defiantly, with now the black staff on his hands. "You have summoned me," called out the voice, then it was silent once more. The staff was on his hands and suddenly it extended into a great length, rapidly piercing the cloud which Big Mom stood on. "What is the meaning of this?" exclaimed Big Mom as Zeus was split in TW feet to a loud crash. Zeus was just starting to merge with its scattered pieces, but the black staff had a mind of its own as it multiplied into 100 pieces and accurately struck Zeus, scattering it into even tinier pieces. Big Mom stared at the Straw Hat Man. For the first time in her life, she felt fear. How long has it been since she truly questioned her own abilities to match up with someone who can shatter her confidence? Was it during the time with rocks? Kaido was a fun plaything. Newgate was a weak man whose intentions were to build a loving family. Shiki was very ambitious, and Captain John was a lecherous bastard. Too bad for Shaki running off with Silvers. Ah yes, the feeling of utter desperation. How could she get out of this mess? Meanwhile, Luffy had questions on his own. Who the hell was this staff and why the hell is he wielding it? So there was Luffy with his new long staff, against Big Mom with Prometheus and Napoleon, along with Zeus that slowly reconstructed itself. And Luffy, while he felt the strength of the black long staff along his hands, he felt it spoke to him, it was saying its name. Enma. The power coursed from all over his body as he spoke its name. The staff twirled in the air until it finally settled in the hands of Luffy once more. The staff spoke to him as if to instruct him how to wield the magnificent weapon. "Command me as you will, my king," called out the voice, to which Luffy found that he was in sync with the weapon. The possibilities of the combined techniques with his gum fruit and this amazing staff. What were its powers? The combinations were endless. Expand Enma. With his command, the once normal-sized black long staff grew exponentially. It was aimed towards Big Mom, who brushed off the strike, using Napoleon to deflect the strike. At that moment, all people were able to feel it, from Whitebeard to Katakuri, then Mihawk to Zephyr, Akainu to Kizaru, from Linlin to Ryukogyu. All across Whole Cake Island they knew. They all knew that the real king was here. Whole Cake War. Katakuri with Vice Admiral Garp. "Damn old man, what do you want?" Katakuri caressed his jaw. The punch from the Vice Admiral was very painful, though nothing completely damaging. "Shut up, brat. Quiet down, someone might hear us." Garp placed a massive boulder on the entranceway of the cave, sealing it from any outside interference. "What is so important, old man? If you weren't Captain's family, I would not even give you this chance. Listen here, brat. You are all in great danger today. The fucking world government has created 3 plutons headed this way. We are only here to keep you all here. Once it arrives, it will destroy everything in sight." Garp had gotten close to Katakuri and whispered the information to him, afraid that somebody might hear. "If it's anything like the one that attacked Sphinx, then we're in a world of crap." Katakuri began to fall into the memory of the war on Sphinx, how it took the combined effort of 4 Emperor-level warriors to halt the advances of the massive ship of destruction, how it left more than half of Whitebeard's forces in shambles. "Exactly, you damn brat. So as soon as Luffy comes out victorious against Big Mom, signal a retreat. Somehow, someway, you will all have to leave out of here. Way ahead of you, old man." In the hand of Katakuri was a mirror, meaning Brûlé and company were listening. "Got it, sis?" "Yes, brother," exclaimed Brûlé. Lopez grabbed the mirror device and began to coo at seeing his uncle. "Hello, little one," said Katakuri, to which Chiffon took her son back and apologized for the baby interrupting the conversation. "Sorry about that, brother." She apologized once more, but Katakuri just waved it off. "Well then, it seems like we're all set here. Just stay here until then, since they will think we are fighting." Garp took a seat on a rock but felt a presence nearby. Somebody had been listening in. "Katakuri, there is someone." Garp never got to finish his sentence as Katakuri had already manifested his trident and tossed it at the eavesdropper, though the spy was able to catch the trident. It was a Cypher Pole agent, who was stronger than those present in the current battles. Garp and Katakuri looked at one another. "You want this one?" asked Garp. Sure, replied Katakuri, cracking his fist together. The former Yonko rushed the cipher pole agent, immediately going for the mask as to reveal who his enemy was. The cipher pole agent overestimated himself, as it turned out. Dogtooth was no joke. So his mask fell off, revealing a muscular brown-haired man. And the man, as foolish as he is, attempted to use his power, which was his stomach superheating, creating a smelt of sorts. He then took Katakuri's trident and tried to place it within himself, but Dogtooth was too fast, as he was successful in taking his trident back and knocking out the cipher pole agent with a roundhouse kick. One kick and the dog of the world noble was out. Pitiful. Not too bad, but you wasted your movement when you could have just kicked him straight on, commented the master warrior, not shying from giving pointers to the former Yonko. How would you do it then, old man? Asked Katakuri, to which Garp took a step forward. With the cipher pole slowly getting up on his feet, Garp delivered a bone-shattering kick straight to the smelt man's face, sending him crashing to the walls of the cave, effectively knocking him out. See, a straight kick. Got it? Responded Katakuri, surprised at seeing firsthand the power of the hero. He was Captain's grandparent after all. Nami versus CP0 Kumadori. As it turned out, the masked cipher pole agent was Kumadori, formerly a member of CP9, training up to CP0 in order to surpass his old acquaintances. They all disappeared, leaving him on his own. Not like that stupid brat, Nero was good company anyway. His mastery of his hair technique was bar to none, and funny enough, nobody lives long enough to learn his secret technique. Lady, please surrender or I must adhere to my duties to murder you in cold blood. This was Kumadori's declaration. Too bad Nami was no pushover. Try it if you want. Nami placed her weather staff in her pocket, folding it neatly. She then got into form, placing her right palm forward with her left hand resting on the back of her hip. Her right leg was in front of the left, and she invited Kumadori to attack. Her form was similar to different instructors over the course of her life, for the woman who was once tormented by Fishman in her previous life was now the master of their craft. She owned it and mastered it and has become a pure brawler when called upon. Kumadori commanded his hair to separate into 4 limb-like entities. The closest one to Nami attempted to grab her swiftly, ending the predicament. Though Nami stopped on the hair, twisting her legs and causing enough friction to burn the part which she had stepped on. Kumadori shredded the burning hair and used another hair limb to attack Nami, who countered with deflecting the hair and then chopping down. Eventually Kumadori will run out of hair. Nami is betting on that. The chipper fall agent gritted his teeth, pulling his last 2 limb air to strike down the woman. Nami twisted her body, avoiding the strike, though her mistake was jumping in the air as Kumadori was finally able to grab her by her ankles. Finally, he exclaimed in joy as he pulled in the struggling warrior in order to observe her, observe before he would cut her throat. As would be the way of the cipher pole. Nami wiggled and flailed around to no avail, as Kumadori had a tight grasp on her. The lecherous man began to formulate a way to toy with the innocent woman before taking care of her. He used one of his free limbs to slowly remove her top, revealing the undergarment of Nami. Kumadori blushed feverishly as her helplessness was making him excited. Nami helplessly tried to get out of her bind, years of training, years of hard work, and here she was dying by the hands of a pervert. She let tears escape her eyes as Kumadori continued to ride higher and higher up her thigh. Then a thought crossed her mind: she could not lose there. Not here, not now. So with every 1 ounce of her strength, she kicked and used her free feet to try and kick her way out of her predicament. Despite her effort, it was hopeless as the pervert got scaringly close to her private area. Help! Was her thought as the man was going to violate her. Her tears would never touch the ground as something happened. From out of nowhere, something appeared before her, standing in between Nami and Kumadori. He was a man, possessed with anger. Mugiwara! Come back here! Exclaimed an angry emperor in the distance, demanding the return of Nami's savior. In one fell motion, the man had used his new black staff to slice the hair which bound Nami, catching her before she fell. Are you alright? One arm was holding her full weight, while the other still held the black long staff. He gently brought her down and gave her a smile. I must go, he said. Within a blink of an eye, the black staff expanded enough to penetrate clear through Kumadori, his heart coming out on the other side of his body, The anger in Luffy's eyes was evident. If looks could kill, everyone would be dead. "Do not touch my Nami," he said before pulling his extended staff back and returning it to its original form. With one final look at Nami, Luffy shifted to his bound man form and returned with his combat with Big Mom. In Nami's mind, she found it reassuring that he was watching over her, despite being in a climactic clash with a world power. She collapsed on the ground and took a deep sigh. She was alive, and Kumadori was dead. Her mirror device began to vibrate, so she pulled it out from her back pocket and found Brûlé on the other end. "Tactical retreat," said Nami, and she noticed quickly that the Marines were slowly going backwards, returning to their ships. Something was going on. "Copy," replied Nami. She had to let the rest of the crew know. But first, Nami delivered a powerful kick through the guts of T that was more for herself, to make herself feel better. Another one for her sake, it made her feel much better. On her way to the battle, she unleashed a flurry of thundercloud strikes, and numerous weather eggs all over the battlefield. Angry that she was about to be violated, though happy that she was saved by the captain. The captain? Her heart skipped several beats at the thought of him. Her crush for him was definitely growing into something more, but what could it mean? Arlong vs CP0 agent underwater. Arlong found that the enemy agent was swimming against him. He knew immediately that his enemy was a fishman like himself, and he was very skilled in underwater combat. Arlong went after his sinking trident, retrieving it quickly and switching his trajectory to his enemy. Surprisingly, the enemy agent caught up with him, and that on its own was impressive since Arlong was one of the, if not, the fastest fishman in the entire world. Though Arlong did not panic, instead he swiped with his trident, catching the enemy agent off guard. The mask of the agent revealed a face of a young fighter fishman, whose tenacious intensity is well known amongst the fishman population. "Kid, do you really want to die?" Though Arlong received a punch in the face, as an answer from the enemy. In another world, maybe he could have molded this young man into a powerful member of his army. Come to think of it, why not? So with a new goal in mind, Arlong took the second punch of the enemy agent, and twisted it so that he would hold the fighting fishman against his will. The pain was intense, but the enemy would not even utter a scream in their underwater war zone. The kid pulled back though Arlong pursued him, forming into an underwater torpedo, zooming straight to the enemy with his trident over his head. The enemy tried to avoid the strike, but Arlong was faster than the cipher pull agent, effectively piercing him through his stomach. The blue fish man blood floats freely in the open sea, though Arlong immediately wrapped the kid with his own shirt, as to stop the bleeding. With a confused expression on his face, he looked at Arlong, wondering what was happening. "You are my enemy. Why do you assist me?" the confused fighter fishman asked the seasoned warrior. "What's your name, kid?" Arlong asked, floating beside the kid. "Dellinger." Though by revealing his name, he was sentenced to death by the world government. Oh well, he was dead anyway by losing. "Come with me, Dellinger, I'll make you a better soldier than what those damned celestial dragons are doing." "Okay," replied the child, though passing out from being manhandled by the strongest warrior of the sea. All his life his mission was to kill. It was nice to meet someone who can't be killed by him. Maybe he will learn some things from him. Arlong. A voice echoed throughout a mirror, one of which had not rung in many years. Arlong's heart skipped several beats as it was the love of his life, the woman who he had to let go due to his duties. Her voice remained beautiful as the day he fell for her. For a man who was revered as the strongest in all his population, he sure trembled at the thought of speaking with his former lover. Did she still love him? Yes. Arlong deadpanned as Dellinger took the mirror from Arlong's hands and spoke on his behalf, as Arlong was not answering Brûlé. Who are you?" asked Brûlé, with Arlong swiftly taking the mirror from Dellinger's hands. "Brûlé," he finally answered, finally appearing before her in such a long time. Her heart ached at the sight of him, as did his. "Arlong. We are initiating strategic retreat." "Okay," was his short response as the call dropped. He took a deep breath as he found the pain in her eyes, the pain which he caused her. "All right men, strategic retreat," commanded Arlong, and Dellinger, like the young man he was, continued to swim alongside his new commander as he did not know what that meant. Everyone else seems to know, except him. Zoro vs CP0. Hakuba. Hakuba is a monster. a creature who was able to massacre 1,000 well-trained warriors and come out on top. Hakuba was a weapon, nothing more, nothing less. You are pretty good. Zoro continued to exchange blows with the assassin. Neither man was pushing the other. Help me. Suddenly, Hakuba's face swapped into a more normal-looking person. Zoro was taken a little bit back as Hakuba took over once more, cutting him slightly. What was that about? Regardless of the setback, Zoro prided himself of being one of the best swordsmen in the entire world, rivaled by only Dracul Mihawk. Now why was he going to be pushed around by this dual personality disorder guy? Zoro jumped back, placing his third blade in his mouth once more. Hakuba stood in place, his arm dragging low as he was the monster that people said he was. Meanwhile, inside Hakuba was a scared man, the former vessel of the body which they shared. Over the course of the cipher pole training, Hakuba was able to overtake and maintain control of the host body. Previously, Cavendish was able to keep Hakuba dormant, though the cipher pole found Hakuba to be more useful than Cavendish, therefore they wanted Hakuba out at all times. There was also the benefit of the mindless beast only seeking out violence, and therefore a more useful object for the world government. Funny enough, not only was his enemy powerful but Zoro found this Hakuba to be durable, taking and receiving his heavy strikes. Each time he tried to cut him down with his three-sword style, Hakuba was able to parry and return the attack, exchanging blows with the swordsman. Though Zoro was not really struggling, in fact he was enjoying himself. Hey monster. I want to meet your other side, it will be a fun game. I will defeat you to bring out your other personality, announced Zoro, to which Hakuba simply turned his head to the side and a shit-eating grin continued to be plastered across its face. Hakuba lunged at Zoro, bringing his blade, Durandal, to a horizontal cut. Funny enough, Zoro actually caught the handle of the blade with his Wado Ichimoji, prying it away from Hakuba. The monster had a concerned look along its face as Sandai Kitetsu and Shisui were sharply making their way for his throat. How did Zoro obtain the Wado Ichimoji? Well, he got it from his fallen friend. How about the Sandai Kitetsu, at a sketchy shop in Logia Town? Then what about Shisui when Moria was part of the Straw Hats? Turns out, Moria had forgotten about the sword he stole from Wano, and kept it hidden in his floating graveyard. Moria returned and took Shisui from Thriller Bark and gave it to Mihawk before going on his undercover mission. In turn, after Zoro finally earned the right to do so, Mihawk gave Shisui to Zoro, but with the caveat of eventually returning it to its rightful place, Wano. Stop, stop. Just like Zoro anticipated, the person within the monster came out. The dark look about his face was replaced by a handsome man, though now fearing for his life. Zoro stopped his swords from cutting the head of the monster clean off, right on time. If he was wrong, then the agent would be dead. Oh well. Told you so. Zoro had a satisfied smile along his face, obtaining the psychological victory over the enemy. What's your deal? Zoro asked. We were tasked to kill as many people as we can in this war. We are supposed to kill, then when we encounter someone we can't defeat, we retreat, said the other personality of Hakuba. My name is Cavendish, by the way. Thank you for taking care of Hakuba. He has been in control for so long. Cavendish? What kind of name is that? Are you a damn cabbage? Zoro had a hearty laugh in regards to Cavendish's name. And the agent began to get offended, though he changed his mind as it was better he was laughed at than being dead. So what now, cabbage? Damn it. My name is Cavendish. He then began to think of his next move. I want to pay back the world government for giving a platform for Hakuba to murder. Well, if we take care of your alter ego, I guess I can bring you along. What DN, as you are free of Hakuba, Captain will definitely clash with the celestial dragons eventually, so you can get your revenge then. How will you kill Hakuba? I know a guy who can defeat Hakuba from within your soul for good. Well, of course, Zoro meant his soulful friend, Brook. Deal, responded Cavendish, though he had to see it to believe it. Kuro vs CP0 Stussy. Funny how you ants are actively trying to resist. Despite the slashes of the man with 1,000 plans, he was never able to reach the CP0 agent. With a fatal wound around Jin, Kuro was short on time, and yet he was not even able to dent the agent. Shut up. His blood was starting to boil as the agent was getting on his last nerve. Stussy, better known for her underground dealings, was a proficient fighter, manipulating and toying with her opponents. This is why she is heavily valued in her organization, for her efficiency and willingness to complete her mission no matter what. No matter what. Kuro attempted to cut her down once more, but every time he seemed to be one step slower. He figured that she was just toying with him, letting him get close enough to annoy him. He figured this out from the moment he engaged her in battle, and so he has been a bit slower than usual, so that eventually, once she would get comfortable enough, he would then use his maximum speed. And his moment finally arrived, though despite his trickery, Stussy was simply faster, smarter, and more clever than he was. For a man who prided himself of his superior intelligence, it was nice to be outwitted by someone else. It just means he would have to get better. But will he live long enough to learn his true potential? For Stussy, the Cypher Pole agent, stabbed him through his guts, coming out on the other side. She had a satisfied smile across her face, licking her lips as she watched his collapse. Though Kuro, while something else went through his mind at the contact with Stussy, it was brief yet it was clear. You will all die here today. Stussy knew of the Elder Star's orders for the 3 Pluton. She wasn't given a chance to verify her kill, as a certain Albatross newsman appeared between herself and the fallen pirate. Fancy seeing you here, Stussy. Morgans was familiar with the underworld head of the Pleasure District. He knew of her involvement with the world government, but not this deep. Ditto, Morgans, so you weren't dead yet? The animosity was there, that much is evident. Indigo went after Jin and treated his deadly wound, although Violet was tasked to carry their fallen comrade as he would need a more rapid treatment, and they would need to get him to HQ as soon as possible. Well, these damned Marines will wish that I'm dead after my next headline. Morgans waited for Stussy to move, though she did not try to attack him. Instead she retreated back. Knighton immediately went to Kuro's side and began to resuscitate him, though his eyes never left the retreating Stussy. Kuro, well, a new realization covered his mind, as per word of mouth, he learned that the former commander of the Straw Hats was after a certain woman who killed his family. For a brief moment, Kuro saw a vision of Stussy standing before a young Rob Lucci, smiling under her mask as he watched his parents die by her own hands. For Stussy was the one that Lucci was after, the one who murdered his parents in cold blood. Though he wouldn't be able to relay this information, for one, he was passing out, and two, Lucci was nowhere to be found. Battlefield B at Enel vs Admiral Kizaru, Vista vs Vice Admiral Momonga, Flamenco vs Vice Admiral Doberman, Jozu vs Admiral Zephyr, Marco vs Admiral Ryukogyu, Crocodile vs Vice Admiral Smoker, Mihawk vs Admiral Fujitora, or Whitebeard vs Admiral Akainu. One thing was certain, the Marines were not pushing, they were simply stalling. News came in from Brûlé that the SBAG Marines were planning to wipe them all out. Kizaru disappeared in a flash of light. Momonga collided with Vista, pushed him back and jumped away from the battle. Marco watched as the plant life of Ryukogyu was being burned down by his flame and no sign of the real admiral. Crocodile had the advantage over Smoker, but the man retreated as soon as the fight was getting good. Zephyr got a good punch in on Jozu before retreating. Then Mihawk and Fujitora had to halt their battle as Fujitora retreated as well. Whitebeard yelled after Akainu as he turned tail, and as soon as the Marines were clear from Whole Cake Island, 3 massive Pluton ships emerged, immediately raining hellfire all over the territory of Big Mom. Not one of the Straw Hats nor the Whitebeard pirates questioned the decision to retreat, and everyone believed that Luffy would get out on time. So with either a door or a mirror passageway, they retreated. Monkey D. Luffy vs Big Mom Charlotte Linlin Enma was a weapon creature, not to be confused by the named Blade Enma. No, Enma is the name which was given to him by his master 850 years ago. For he was a creature created by his master. Well, that was another story. His creator manifested Enma the long staff from the strongest earth in the world, making it malleable enough to expand into a great length. It was carved into perfection, enough so that its entity within was able to multiply itself, making a perfect clone. It could expand in girth, making it wider than its normal size. In fact, at its peak, it could even grow to the size of mountains. Thus Enma was dubbed the weapon fit for the king. And now, after being dormant for centuries, Enma was finally awoken by the king. The reincarnation of his original master, embodied by this Luffy fellow. for the weapon has no purpose but to serve his true master. And here it was, Enma, the long staff, twisting and turning at the command of the king. Luffy returned to his battle with Big Mom standing defiantly in front of the former strongest woman in all the seas. No longer will that be the case once he finishes with her. Over in the distance, a buffet of weather eggs was happening, and Zeus, like the child that he was, became more interested in the event in the distance than the command of his creator. So Zeus snuck away from the battle between Luffy and Big Mom, and went to eat some thunderclouds. Prometheus noticed the retreating figure of Zeus and chased after him, leaving Big Mom with Napoleon as her only weapon against Luffy and his long staff. Doesn't matter, she was the strongest, and she still believed it. Luffy began to penetrate her guard, unleashing his new staff through the guard of Napoleon. Return to me now, Prometheus, Zeus. Although neither homie listened as they enjoyed the meal provided to them by Nami. Big Mom gritted her teeth as she had to use her ace. So Big Mom slashed downwards, slightly catching Luffy off guard. He stumbled backwards as she began to open her arms outwards. She then began to glow a certain color as all of a sudden, from all over the island, life began to retreat from the homies which once filled the entire island. Her wonderland had turned into a desolate wasteland without her abilities. What was once a land filled with life was not filled with emptiness. No more life, no more citizens, no more homies, no more sweets, no more children, no more harmony. It was no longer was it her dream for Mother Caramel. Instead she used her power to take everything she had and used that stored power to unleash her full fury against Mugiwara. And yet Luffy did not falter, continuing to hold Enma on his side. Despite her massive power-up, Luffy kept up with her. Despite her giant bicorn blade, Luffy began to outspeed her. Despite sacrificing her dream, he continued to outperform her. And just like that, with the fall of Napoleon, Big Mom was no more. She was simply Lin, the former emperor, now reduced to a kneeling figure. She could not process her loss and this would be her ultimate downfall. Luffy continued to press on, once and for all deciding to end her life. He prepared Enma to strike her down, one final time. As the staff got near her, Ted flashed before her eyes. She smiled at the prospect of death though it never came. For a body got in between her and her destiny. Lin, through all her years of controlling her world, never wrapped her head around the chance of actually losing. She was one of the 4 people in the entire world closest to the One Piece. Her reign was supreme. And yet here she was, on both knees, with her eldest son standing in between her and the tip of a long staff. Please, leave my mother alone. Parasparrow, despite all his shortcomings, truly loved his mother. And Luffy, who's never known the love of his mother, could not relate. But Luffy understood love, and this sacrifice was enough for Luffy to put a halt in his advance. His rapid acceleration was surprisingly halted at a moment's notice, inches from piercing the heart of Parasparrow, who stood in front of his own mother. He removed his vest shirt and created a makeshift holding for the staff. And Luffy placed the staff, which was named Enma, on his back as he had more questions for it later. Not once did he leave the gaze of Parasparrow, who maintained his conviction on protecting his mother. Very well then, I won't be the judge and the jury for your mother. Luffy then began to leave, and found the defeated form of Big Mom to be satisfying. There is no more Big Mom, as most of your children have joined up with me. If you ever try to rise up or try to make a power play, remember today Lin. And the giant woman remained unmoving in her defeat, her eyes never leaving the ground. Captain, emergency. A call was finally able to get through as Luffy pulled out a mirror to communicate with his crew. Yes, Brûlé? Asked Luffy. 3 Pluton ships are here, you must go. Is everyone? Though he did not finish his sentence as Brûlé knew what he would ask. Yes, Captain, everyone is safe in the mirror world. Even the citizens of Whole Cake Island were directed to safety. You're the only Straw Hat left on Whole Cake Island. Luffy looked back once more, finding Parasparrow comforting his own mother. Parasparrow. Though the Candyman never turned to face Luffy, electing to continue to comfort his mother. He heard it, the news from his sister, they were going to die that day. I know Mugiwara, just go. He tried to offer some help to his enemy, as he always did, but looks like they made up their mind. Just like that, Luffy left through a doorway. He then closed the door as a loud explosion occurred in the background. For the 2 people who remained in Whole Cake Island that day, They received a world-shattering hell as 3 Pluton ships destroyed everything that Linlin had worked for many, many years. Linlin found herself looking up to the eyes of her eldest, who cried as their entire world collapsed before them. She finally realized what was happening and realized that her wish was finally coming to fruition. And in a sudden turn of events, she found her eldest sacrifice to be unique as nobody has ever looked out for her well-being. So she embraced Perospero in a motherly hug and waited as Pluton did what it meant to do. Destroy. And Nami, as she played with Zeus and Prometheus within the mirror world, became wide-eyed as the 2 weapons of the former Yonko disappeared in thin air, gone forever. And as her 2 new friends disappeared in a puff of air, Nami found Luffy passing by her, with a serious expression about him. "Let's go." The rest of the crew had remained within Brulee's mirror world before returning to HQ. They waited for the captain's command. And as people began to filter out of the mirror world, Nami found more problems on the other side, as immediately the group was filled with multiple levels of emotions. Dawn Island, Straw Hat HQ. And she's never seen him this way, as he was embroidered in anger, zooming through the HQ and into the open sea. Passing through the village in a blur as his anger overwhelmed him. On his trail were the rest of his commanders, realizing immediately what was going on. For aboard a steampunk-like ship were Ace, Kuzan, and Moria fighting a group of 10 people, and within the belly of the ships were 2 women, 2 very important women to the captain. Luffy went past the 10 enemy people, going directly for the belly, leaving the 10 invaders to his commanders. Meanwhile the king himself, with his makeshift staffholder, immediately broke the cell which bound his wives. Vivi and Viola cried at the sight of their betrothed. Luffy safely removed the cuffs from both women and they immediately went to embrace him. Vivi around his right arm and Viola around his left arm. "I've finally grown enough to marry you," said Vivi softly to his ears, the princess of Alabasta in his arms. "You were alive after all, you jerk," Viola whispered as the last memory of Luffy was his death. She then tightened her embrace, not wanting to let go of her man. Though Luffy had to separate from his 2 beloved, for the moment he had a point to prove. He carried his 2 wives on the deck, holding them by their waist and gently placing them on the deck of the Victoria Punk, where Robin and Hancock immediately rushed to aid the 2 injured queens. The first thing Luffy saw as he exited the mirror dimension from Whole Cake was the lines of dead bodies all over the HQ, with it destroyed. Then there was Gem and Bakura dejected from what he assumed was the massacre of his crew. Then before he could even process the loss, he sensed invaders near his headquarters. It was that bastard kid. He remembered that feeling that would only come from that piece of shit. Though more troubling was the feeling of 2 ladies who were important to him. So before asking anything, learning anything from what happened, he went after his queens, now taking out his anger to the outmatched commander. So there he was, on his knees between Mihawk and Katakuri. Every single one of his commanders were caught and were either beaten into a pulp or passed out from being manhandled by the Straw Hats. Killer was face down, his mask broken from the beatdown he received from Fire Fist, Ace. As soon as the allies arrived, the Kid fleet was no match. Bartolomeo's barrier was no match for Enel, as the Thunder God was angry beyond comprehension. If a normal Enel could stand toe-to-toe with a light admiral, imagine a pissed-off Enel against a lousy barrier boy. Hawkins tried to use his straw creature, but found that his creature could not match the strength of Arlong. Heat was unmoving by the tip of Zoro's blade. Wire had his hands up as Moria kept him in check. His shadow was trapped by the former warlord. Caribou's swamp did not get him anywhere as Kuzan froze him in his tracks. Kelly Funk and Terry Funk were manhandled by Crocodile. Apu stood no chance as Corazon sat over his defeated body. No sound escaped the Music Man. "Did you do this?" Luffy's voice was low and yet Kid stared at him defiantly. He referred to his base, how his friends were now all dead. "Fuck you, Mugiwara." Kid tried to spit in Luffy's face, but instead he received the bottom of Luffy's feet to his face, and before he could recover, Luffy pulled on both arms to get him back to his kneeling position. He then placed his foot on the chest of Kid and once again asked, "Did you do this?" Once again, Kid stared at him defiantly. He pushed slightly to the chest of Kid, threatening to pull his arms clean off their socket. "Teach," cried Whitebeard on the top of his lungs as he looked into the lifeless eyes of each of his fallen children. They laid side by side, colder than ice. They were dead. Crackles formed in the air as things began to violently tremble. If nobody puts Whitebeard on check, he could destroy Dawn Island in a single punch. The news was delivered by Dr. Hirulik and Dr. Kureha, both of which collapsed on the ground with tears filling their eyes. As they were finally allowed to break down with their emotion, they had been strong for some time, enough time until the captain returned. "No!" exclaimed Marco as a pillar of blue flame emerged from where he stood. The sky and twisted violently from his anger. Meanwhile Vista and Jozu fell on both knees. Namur collapsed on the ground. Izo could not believe what was happening and Flamenco cried in the air. What was once 16 divisions of the great Whitebeard pirates, was now reduced to 6. Luffy then looked back at Kid, who had a shit-eating grin on his face. "Told you so," he said, which he regretted. "Look away," Hancock commanded to the young Vivi, although she remained firm in watching the events transpire. "No, I must see this," said Vivi as she watched her man punish their captor. And Luffy, while he kept his word and pushed against the chest of Kid, ripping both arms clean off. "That was for my queens." He took one limb each for his queens, both of which were kidnapped by Kid. "Ah!" The scream of agony filled the air as the once confident pirate laid on his own pool of blood. His former commanders looked on in fear as their captain was easily manhandled by Mugiwara. Luffy looked at Law then nodded his head before leaving the scene. He took one massive leap to the shores of Dawn Island, trembling at the thought of his fear becoming a reality. "Ace, cauterize them," Law asked, to which Ace swiftly unleashed a precise fire strike to both the detached limb, closing the wound from bleeding. Then, Kid passed out from exhaustion and Law began to work on trauma, all the while Chopper was trying his best not to cry as he readied the medical ward. Everyone watched as Luffy made his slow way back to HQ, dreading every step as the closer he got, the more real it became. Jabra, Tanaka, Macvis, Satori, Dice, Crocus, Buffalo, Trebol, Chew, Absalom, Buffalo, Zeph. They were all dead. Whitebeard was outside of the facility, waiting for Luffy as his hands trembled grasping the handle of his Bacento. "Teach. I'm going to go after Teach and murder him." His voice carried a quake to which Luffy neutralized with his rubber room. "We will go after Teach. I'll kill him with my own hands," replied Luffy looking into his hands, setting up the next course of action, to kill Marshal D. Teach, Blackbeard. Little did Luffy know, the decision would not come easy, as on the other side of the world, a certain red-haired man was held captive by the world's strongest beast.